Titanic, we all know, as the global economy, appears to be moving along at full speed. But signs of sea ice are dead ahead. The first alarm bells have been sounded from several economists that know to look for the most subtle signs of danger of a global economic collapse.
We have a bubble around the world in demographic spending, which keeps declining in more countries. And we can predict this by country. Japan was the first to peak, and then the US, and now Europe. But we also have the greatest debt bubble in modern history, 2 to 4 times what we've seen back in the roaring 20s, last time we had a debt bubble. And all we need, like in 2008 with the subprime crisis, is a trigger to cause this debt bubble to reset and deleverage, or what I call a financial detox.
And when you go south of the border, even below Mexico Way, it's currency crisis after currency crisis, commodity crash after commodity crash. Current events form future trends. What happened yesterday over in Brazil? Well, they had a wonderful time. About 500,000 people turned out to protest against the government. How come? Well, they're in a recession. Inflation is skyrocketing, and the currency is plummeting.
Is the economy moving? The Baltic Dry Index has hit a new low. The Baltic Dry Index is the assessment of the price of moving all of the globe's major raw materials by sea, including commodities like coal, grain, and iron ore. Tyler Durden of Zero Hedge reports, "Last week I received news from a contact who is friends with one of the biggest billionaire shipping families in the world. He told me they had no ships at sea right now because operating them meant running at a loss. Commerce between Europe and North America has literally come to a halt for the first time in known history. Not one cargo ship is in transit in the North Atlantic between Europe and North America. All of them, hundreds, are either anchored offshore or in port. Nothing is moving. It is a horrific economic sign, proof that commerce has literally stopped. The very Chinese shipyards supplying the needed vessels to transport the world's raw materials are going bankrupt due to the struggling economies across the globe. According to Global Times, experts have said that half of China's shipbuilding enterprises will go bankrupt in the coming years. Other signs of a sinking ship? Graham Summers of Zero Hedge reports that the bursting of the bond bubble has begun. The bond bubble was close to $80 trillion in size going into 2008. Globally, the bond bubble has grown by more than $20 trillion since 2008. Today, it is north of $100 trillion, with an additional $555+ trillion in derivatives. Globally, over 50% of all corporate bonds are now junk.
In the UK, you have the ability to sell the same bond an infinite number of times. In the United States, you're limited. You can't sell the same bond an infinite number of times. You can sell it a few times and claim that it has a collateral value. But in the UK, and this is why all of the major banks and all the major countries, treasuries, outsource their fraud to the UK. This is why the UK is responsible for the Lehman collapse, the AIG collapse, the Bernie Madoff collapse, the London whale from JP Morgan collapse, because everyone outsources their fraud to the UK, because the UK is where you can commit egregious fraudulent financial behavior.
The Dow Jones has lost 1,500 points in 10 days and still has a lot further to fall. The fragility of the markets are worse than pre-2008. One minor trigger could send the globe into, at the very least, yet another major recession. Regardless, Obama will hear none of that.
Anyone claiming that America's economy is in decline is peddling fiction.
John Bound for Infowars.com.
Dealing with the debates, dealing with the imminent fall, we hope, of Hillary Clinton as all of her lies and corruption begin to come out. Dealing with so much. But before we get into Cruz walking into that powerful left uppercut of Trump on insulting New Yorkers, before we get into the whole natural-born citizen issue that both of them, frankly, have under a very strict interpretation of the Constitution, that's Trump and Cruz. And I've always thought that way. His mom's born in Scotland, too, so it really gets interesting from that point out. David Knight's going to be breaking that down as well. But I want to start with a special report that we aired in that first little segment that some stations don't carry by John Bound. Global economy dead in the water. It's 5 minutes long. It's on Infowars.com. I'm going to tweet it out right now at Real Alex Jones in case you didn't hear it or see it. I mean, this global economy is melting down. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is down 400-plus points today. That's almost 2,000 points the last 2 weeks since the new year began 15 days ago. So this is engineered. We told you it was coming. We told you the derivatives were bigger than they'd ever been. We told you the big banks were already positioning themselves, buying up gold at record levels while saying you shouldn't buy gold. And I'm not saying, you know, gold's the best thing in the galaxy anyways. What I'm saying is they're hoarding it while telling you not to have it, which is a hedge against collapse, so you have something. The world has never been this leveraged. Different numbers are out there, but we're reportedly leveraged many times more than Weimar Republic or even Zimbabwe when it comes to derivatives. So I'm not here glooming and dooming, but I'm watching CNN, I'm watching Fox News this morning while I'm on the elliptical, while I'm exercising, just kind of watching the closed captioning at the gym. And it was pretty much all about the debate or all about cultural stuff and really not much about what's happening with the economy. They would just mention it in the background. Well, the Dow Jones is down 400-plus points, and John Bound's report on Infowars.com goes over that. Dow falls 400 points as oil weighs. Fidelity, Stealth, Bear could see big turnaround. So they're acting like this wasn't seen coming. Here's another headline from CNBC. This is not 2008. It's actually worse. What have all of our experts, and what have I been saying the last 2 years? This will be worse than 2008 because it's by design, just like 2008, to get more banker bailouts, more funding, more global government, more bank regulations against banks the globalists don't control, against mutual funds they don't control, against businesses they don't control in the financial market. The financial market has been consolidated since 2008, over 80%. I mean, that's in the news. They have taken it over. The big corrupt robber barons that ran this whole show are the ones using regulatory systems to come in and take over everything. They're trying to take down local banks. They're trying to take down credit unions. They are, I mean, I talked to credit union heads. I talked to bankers. I've read the Texas Banking Association head back in 2009. You know, it read like Alex Jones wrote it. It's a foreign takeover. Banks, they did this. They're now shutting us down, not letting us lend. This will kill lending to real businesses. And now the big banks, you notice, don't lend to small businesses like they did, even when you have good credit, because they got all the free money they want. They went beyond fractional reserve banking. So that's the big issue. Now, David Knight and others are going to be coming in, breaking down all the different angles of this. And then I'll be back live this Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m. We'll be doing a live report tonight as well. I've got major stories I'm working on, and I'll be popping in. But the time we have till we go to break here, I want to start then getting into some of these clips. And the most important one is Trump saying, I am angry. I am angry. Well, of course, he has a right to be angry. And the media and Obama act like it's weird to be angry. They've got all their surrogates out spewing racism, division, civil war, class envy, gender war. But then he gets up there and says, can't we all just get along? Can't we all just be buddies, a la Rodney King? This is how he appears to rise above it. But people see through his surrogates and others. And, of course, we should be angry. That's why Trump's successful. He's angry. He's off the cuff. People are sick of scripting. That's all I ever told Rand Paul to do, to stay at the lead, was to be, you know, real, populist. That's why I'm successful, because I'm real, I'm populist. Well, even if you're not that, but you're a patriot, people need to see you get more down in the trenches. And that's lessons for everybody. So let's go ahead and go to this clip. Trump, I'm angry because our country is run horribly.
South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, in her response to the State of the Union address, appeared to choose sides within the party, saying Republicans should resist, quote, the siren call of the angriest voices. She confirmed she was referring to you, among others. Was she out of line? And how would a President Trump unite the party.
Okay. First of all, Nikki this afternoon said I'm a friend of hers, actually a close friend, and wherever you're sitting, Nikki, I am a friend. We're friends. That's good. But she did say there was anger. And I could say, oh, I'm not angry. I'm very angry because our country is being run horribly. And I will gladly accept the mantle of anger. Our military is a disaster. Our health care is a horror show. Obamacare, we're going to repeal it and replace it. We have no borders. Our vets are being treated horribly. Illegal immigration is beyond belief. Our country is being run by incompetent people.
All right, let's stop there.
Yes, I am angry.
Everything he said is true except the incompetence. They put incompetent people in the low levels and mid levels who will just follow the computer programs basically and do what they're told and not question. But at the top, this is by design. The globalists write books about it. They brag about it. They're taking over the planet with economic warfare. But great job. And I would say, great job to Fox Business. They did the opposite of CNBC. CNBC got skewered by nasty questions, by twisting things, by being petulant, by being arrogant. Both of the commentators, both of the questioners were respectful. They did a great job. And I'm not defending mainstream media. They just did a great job. Still, a lot of the debate was academic because most of those Republicans won't actually do what they say they're pushing. They're known for being total flying around in the wind like a weather vane. I saw a political commercial where Rubio's a weather vane, flip-flopping, spinning in the wind. That's absolutely true. And so are the others, other than people like Ted Cruz and folks like Rand Paul. They have not flip-flopped. They've changed a few issues here and said why they did, but overall they've been very, 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 very steady. But this is really all about the fact that everybody's watching the Republican debates, while meanwhile the Democrats hide them on the weekend during playoff games because they don't want you to hear Hillary and don't want you to hear Bernie Sanders and hear all the socialism and hear all the tyranny and hear all the anti-gun stuff. They're hiding them. That's really the big issue here. That's what has to be dealt with here. Now, I'm not going to get to the Ted Cruz clip, but he comes out and says, look, I'm, New York, we all know, liberal, pro-abortion, gay marriage. We know what New York is. Conservatives don't really come out of there. And he's trying to play to the South. I don't think Cruz really understands the South and the West and stuff. Okay? Northerners love Southerners. Southerners love Northerners when it comes down to Americana. Southerners love Trump. I get the fact that you can't really trust somebody who's been up in the elite of New York. If he would have said Trump's from the elite of New York, he's been for Hillary before, he just doesn't have a history. We don't know what we're getting. What he says sounds great, but with me, you know what you're going to get because of my track record. I mean, I like Ted Cruz. He's great. The problem is that he walks into things, he just really let Trump tear him up. And then here's Trump's response to him talking about New York. I would have said, I think you're part of the New York elites that feed on the great people of New York. That's what New Yorkers really think, instead of what he did. Let's go to part of this clip from Trump as we get ready to go to break. Here he is responding to Cruz, quote, insulting New Yorkers.
So conservatives actually do come out of Manhattan, including William F. Buckley and others, just so you understand. And just so, if I could, because he insulted a lot of people, I've had more calls on that statement that Ted made. New York is a great place. It's got great people. It's got loving people, wonderful people. When the World Trade Center came down, I saw something that no place on earth could have handled more beautifully, more humanely than New York. You had two 110-story buildings come crashing down. I saw them come down. Thousands of people killed. And the cleanup started the next day, and it was the most horrific cleanup probably in the history of doing this and in construction. I was down there, and I've never seen anything like it. And the people in New York fought and fought and fought, and we saw more death and even the smell of death. Nobody understood it, and it was with us for months, the smell, the air. and we rebuilt downtown Manhattan, and everybody in the world watched, and everybody in the world loved New York and loved New Yorkers, and I have to tell you, that was a very insulting statement.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, your host for the rest of this Friday, January the 15th, 2016. And as I'm looking at the tickers here, they're going down, approaching 500 points down on the Dow. That's a little bit over 3%, 3.25% down on the S&P. The NASDAQ is down over 4%, 4.12%. So things are looking very bad economically. That will only bolster the case for a Donald Trump presidency, because I think that when you look at these people on the stage, I don't have any confidence based on what I saw. Oh, you're going to choose Jeb Bush to do anything to understand what the situation is? And, of course, Walmart is now going to shutter 269 stores, 154 of them in the United States. This is a story that was up on the Drudge Report. And I thought it was interesting when I read this. They said more than 95% of the stores set to be closed in the United States are within 10 miles of another Walmart. Understand what that's all about, because I've been in a business that's been competing against large Wall Street financed multinational corporations. What they like to do, it's a very familiar pattern of competition, if you want to call it competition. It's predatory. These people who have unlimited amounts of money because they can float their stuff on Wall Street, junk stocks, just like we've got the disconnection between our dollar and its true value with the Federal Reserve. They can float this money just like the federal government can get the Federal Reserve to print money. These guys can essentially print money by going onto Wall Street. And they can open up one giant Walmart after the other until they drive every mom and pop out of business. And that's what they have done. So now that they've done that, they're going to consolidate some of that. Nevertheless, we're seeing that there's shaky retail information. And, of course, the oil market, the price of oil is plummeting. It dropped down, finished below $30 a barrel. We have people who are saying that they're looking for another 10% decline. This is Larry Fink talking about this on NBC. He's BlackRock chairman, CEO. He said today that he thought stocks could fall another 10%, that oil prices could test $25 per barrel. I remember it wasn't that many months ago that everybody was saying, well, could they possibly go below $40 a barrel? Boy, that would be catastrophic to the oil market. Nevertheless, that is about to happen. And here's the other issue. We're going to have, if this continues to go through as it is, we're going to have Iranian oil coming on the market. One of the largest supplies of oil in the world is going to be coming online. That will only push down the oil even more. But here's the fundamental thing about the price of oil. It isn't just that there's a glut. The reason there's a glut is because demand has fallen. Demand has fallen because the economy is stopping everywhere. That's why you see Apple having Foxconn in China declare a holiday for their people there. Essentially, I'm assuming it's an unpaid holiday because of the slave wages. So they're going to essentially shut down their factory for a while, hoping that they can catch up to demand. And there are some issues with Apple's products not being as innovative as they used to be before. But that's just another example in general of how demand is falling. And it's not just the Foxconn factory that's making iPhones that is seeing soft demand. So this is something that is happening everywhere. Now, if you want to prepare for what may be a very severe situation, who knows what's going to happen? We see our government, and we've been saying this for a long time at InfoWars, we believe that one of the reasons you've seen this massive adventurism, even under a Democrat president like Obama, creating war after war after war, certainly there's the military-industrial complex profit motive. These people want to restart the Cold War because that is a massive profit center for them. You can make a lot more money fighting the Russians with bombers and intercontinental ballistic missiles and giant navies than you can if you want to try to fight an unconventional warfare. Nevertheless, the way they've put the war on terror, they've positioned it as a police state industrial complex where they want to go out and militarize our police to that level and put camera surveillance on every corner, multiple cameras everywhere, the capability to record and to analyze everybody's every movement, your activity-based intelligence, your geospatial intelligence, mapping the human domain. That's a lot of money they can make. But, of course, they're doing that as well as creating the foreign wars because if we have a massive economic meltdown, people are going to be angry. And one of the ways that you shift their anger is with a foreign war. And if you can't control that anger by shifting it to a foreign war, you can always hit them with the iron fist of a police state. So all that makes sense. Now, with all that in mind, one of the ways that you may want to prepare, and there's a great special that we have at InfoWars store today, that is 30 to 40% off our select storable food, and that is ending today, this special. For the next 24 hours only, we're giving you 30 to 40% off the retail price of all InfoWars select storable food at InfoWarsStore.com. All of these select foods have a shelf life of 25 years. They're made great, they're packaged in the USA, and they taste great. Food prices are going to go up around the world. Now is the time to start getting prepared. Get 30 to 40% off all InfoWars select storable foods at the InfoWarsStore.com for the next 24 hours only. Now, one of the things I think that came out of the debate last night, and Alex mentioned it, was the excellent performance. And let's say that, it's a performance. That's what's going on at this point. There are some real issues and some issues that weren't talked about, and we're going to talk about those as well. But for most of these debates, that's the way they're evaluated. Going back to the first television debates, they look at performance. And when you look at that, I think Donald Trump did a masterful job last night, just from a performance standpoint. Even with the natural-born citizen issue, he deflected that. He said, hey, it's other people that have this problem. I'll invite you as a vice president. I would not invite him as a vice president because it matters to me, and I'll tell you why it matters. This boils down to whether or not we're going to have a living Constitution or whether or not we're going to have an originalist interpretation of the Constitution. In other words, are we going to look at the documents and go with what they say, or are we just going to go with whatever the current dictator has to say, or stick our finger in the wind, or let the Supreme Court say it's going to mean whatever it says? Think about the fact that when you're looking at the term natural-born citizen, and they don't define it, they did not define the term militia either. Both of those terms meant something very specific to them. They felt that it was so well understood that it didn't need to be defined. And we're going to tell you what that definition is. But consider the fact that if you're going to let the definition of natural-born citizen just kind of float in the wind and be interpreted as anybody wishes, you're going to see them putting out the idea that the militia is the National Guard. I had valedictorian high school students who worked for me telling me that, and they were smart kids, but they had been thoroughly miseducated by the government schools to think that the militia was a National Guard, something that didn't come around until the early 20th century. No, they had a very clear definition of the militia. We can understand what that definition is. And I think this is a real important issue because it goes to the foundation of what are we going to have? Are we going to have the rule of law? Or are we going to be subject to the whims of whoever is the current dictator in office? And I think it's very important to have that discussion. And when I look at this, if citizenship doesn't matter, if it really doesn't matter, then why don't we just have an H-1B visa president? Because as I looked at the stage, for me personally, I didn't see anybody there that I really want to have for president. Maybe we ought to open this up to people who are not citizens of the United States. Maybe Nigel Farage is available, or Lord Monckton, or Paul Joseph Watson. Maybe we could get one of them to come over here. Because they understand liberty, they understand freedom, they have a freedom orientation. I think they could read the Constitution and understand it, and I think they have the personal integrity that when they take the oath of office to be subject to the Constitution, which is our real king in this country, I think they would take it seriously. So let's just have an H-1B visa program, and we could make them citizens for 4 years while they're president, and then they could move on. Maybe we should do that. I think it's a very serious issue, and other people think it's a serious issue too. Here's this article from Reuters. 1/4 of Republicans think that Cruz's birthplace disqualifies him for president. They say 1/4 think that he was born in Canada, so therefore he's not qualified as a natural-born citizen. Well, they would have that right. And the interesting thing is that it's about the same percentage with all voters, not just with Republicans. 27% of all voters, 28% of independents believe that. They say only 47% of voters surveyed thought that Cruz was qualified to be president with regard to his citizenship. Another 26% said they're not sure. So I'm going to talk to those 26% here in just a moment and tell you why I'm sure that he is not qualified to be president. And they go on to say, and this is what Trump said last night, I already know Democrats are going to bring a lawsuit. Let's play Alan Grayson. This was a comment that he made on January the 7th. And, of course, he didn't just discover this. As Ted Cruz was speaking in the debate, he said, well, Donald Trump wasn't concerned about this back in September, and the Constitution hasn't changed. Well, you know, I was concerned about it. Alan Grayson was talking about it. Other people were talking about it back in September. The Constitution, he's right, doesn't change. And if Ted Cruz wants to run as a constitutionalist, then he owes it to us to not just play debating parlor tricks like he did, to say, well, Donald Trump is not qualified because his mother was from Scotland. Donald Trump's mother was an American citizen 4 years before Donald Trump was born. His grandfather immigrated in the 1880s. Donald Trump is a natural-born citizen. He's born in America of parents who were American citizens. Rubio is an anchor baby. He was born here before his parents were citizens. The parents cannot convey something they don't possess. And they could not convey natural-born citizenship to Marco Rubio when he was born. They weren't American citizens. So we have, out of the top three, as Drudge says, the top three candidates, according to his poll, he says a three-person race. Out of those three candidates, the only one who's even a natural-born citizen is Donald Trump. And if you want to explain why you're eligible, Mr. Cruz, what you should do is you could explain to us. Give us the benefit of your constitutional knowledge. You said you've argued cases before the Supreme Court. Tell us, instead of engaging in this kind of debate sophistry where you cast aspersion on it. The yardstick is not whether or not Donald Trump is a natural-born citizen. It's not whether or not Marco Rubio could run for office or Bobby Jindal. They can't. They're not eligible, okay? They can run for office. They could get elected, but some of us are going to challenge them in court because the Constitution matters. Let's play that clip from Alan Grayson.
Well, it's a legitimate issue. You know, the Constitution says natural-born citizen. It also provides an age limit. So, for instance, Arnold Schwarzenegger clearly is not qualified or eligible to be president of the United States. Whether Ted Cruz falls on that side of the line or the other side of the line is a matter for the courts to determine. And there are legitimate arguments. He's made some legitimate arguments in his defense, and there are legitimate arguments made against that.
Do you plan to file a lawsuit?
Yes.
When would we see such a lawsuit?
If and when he becomes the nominee and tries to qualify for the ballot, and also potentially after he qualifies for the ballot. We have a statute that says that those claims can be made even after the election.
You understand? That's what Donald Trump was talking about. And so Donald Trump didn't want to press the issue of natural-born citizenship, but I think it does matter. When I look at this, I'm very disturbed because I don't believe that Barack Obama was eligible to be president based on what we knew at the time. As Alex said, he believes that his father was Frank Marshall Davis. Nevertheless, with the narrative that he's giving us, if we go by the fact that he says his father was a Kenyan citizen, that his mother was an American citizen, and that he was born in Hawaii, if you believe all of that is true, okay, let's just assume that that's the case. All right, he would not be a natural-born citizen because his father was not a citizen. But it's far worse than that with Ted Cruz, because here's a situation where his father's not a citizen like Obama, and he's not born in America. And then the question as to whether or not his mother is an American citizen, see, the sophistry that he's engaged in is he shows his mother's birth certificate. The questions about his mother came up because she was on a Canadian voting registry. Now, there's no record that she voted in Canada while she was there. Nevertheless, the way they would do this, they would go door to door like a census. They would talk to people. They'd say, are you here? Are you a Canadian citizen? All right, we'll put you on the roll. And so they listed both his father, who was a Canadian citizen, and his mother as being Canadian citizens. Nevertheless, it doesn't really even matter whether or not his mother was a citizen. That is not enough to make him a natural-born citizen. And as Alan Combs was talking to Alan Grayson on his program, Combs said, it's interesting to me that people who had a problem with Obama don't have a problem with Ted Cruz, who was literally born in another country and only recently renounced his Canadian citizenship after he became a senator. Well, you know, I do have a problem with that. I've had a problem with that from the very beginning. Haven't spent a lot of time talking on it about it because he wasn't near the top. Now that he's near the top, we need to look at this and focus on this, especially because it goes to the fundamental issue of whether or not he believes in an originalist interpretation of the Constitution, or if he thinks it's a living document, or if he thinks that he's an exception to the Constitution, like Barack Obama, that if he doesn't qualify and is not eligible, then he can just throw the Constitution under the bus for his own personal ambition. See, that's the real issue here. Now, Grayson went on to say, I don't know. He says the Constitution says natural-born Americans, so now we're counting Canadians as natural-born Americans? He says, look, even the anchor babies were actually born here. He doesn't even meet that qualification. And Holmes says, right, and although I don't like the term anchor babies, it's been embraced by people like Donald Trump and Ted Cruz. He said Marco Rubio, who may in fact be one, I understand. Yeah, that's true. So Marco Rubio is an anchor baby. Ted Cruz is a Canadian. And we're looking at these guys as possibly running for president. Now, here's where a lot of this really picked up speed. And this is on Monday. The former law professor who taught Ted Cruz at Harvard, Lawrence Tribe, wrote an op-ed piece in the Boston Globe on Monday. And this is the title of it. He says, under Ted Cruz's logic, his own logic, he is ineligible for the White House. He said people are entitled to their own opinions about what the definition ought to be. But the kind of judge that Ted Cruz says he admires and would appoint to the Supreme Court is an originalist, one who claims to be bound by the narrowly historical meaning of the Constitution's terms at the time of its adoption. To this kind of judge, to his kind of judge, Cruz, ironically, would not be eligible because the legal principles that prevailed in the 1780s and 90s required someone actually be born on U.S. soil to be a natural-born citizen. Even having 2 U.S. parents would not suffice, and having just an American mother, as Cruz did, would have been insufficient at the time because they made descent from the father decisive, not from the mother, but from the father. Now, this is the key point here, even more so, besides that construct. And Alex touched on this when he said people were concerned about European intrigue. And yes, he says, but the narrow definition reflected 18th century fears of tyrannical takeover of our nation by someone who is loyal to a foreign power. Fears that no longer make sense. But the same could be said of the fears that a tyrannical federal army might overrun our state militias. Oh, okay. So he says, so are we going to look at the Second Amendment's right to bear arms as a historical relic, limit the right to bearing arms by members of today's state militias, the National Guard? We would never have to worry about somebody imposing foreign values on our country by executive order, would we? Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and we're going to be joined by economist as well as the commentary from Alex Jones coming up in the next hour about what is going on with the economy. And, of course, as I'm looking at this, we've got the major markets in the United States down 3 to 3.5% across the board. Everyone is very concerned about what's going on. We see the Chinese economy plummeting. We see oil plummeting. Demand is plummeting. So we're up for some rough roads coming up. Alex is going to be talking to us in the next hour. He's got a special report that he's cut. We're going to be talking to Gerald Celente in the program, as well as Peter Schiff, about what's going to happen with the economy. Now, we've also got some articles up on Infowars.com. Noam Chomsky says Erdogan is aiding terrorists. Of course, that'd be the head of Turkey. And there was an interesting article about him, the same guy, Erdogan, in Turkey, the same guy who's been buying millions of dollars worth of oil a day from ISIS. You've seen the videos, if you watch our broadcast, of the massive caravan of oil being coming from ISIS-controlled territories into Turkey. Well, he has arrested a dozen professors for simply signing a petition denouncing military operations against Kurds in the southeast part of the country. As they point out, even a joking reference comparing Gollum and Erdogan is enough to get you thrown in jail in Turkey. That's our ally, you know. Erdogan's our ally in Turkey, just like the guys who cut off 50 people's heads the beginning of the year. Happy New Year in Saudi Arabia. Let's kill all of our political opponents and just chop their heads off. They kill more people than ISIS, but those are our allies in the area. RT says Washington's new and improved plan for Syria is to have a Sunnistan, a safe zone for terrorists. I think that's a brilliant way to refer to that. Of course, we had Gary North years past would talk about the areas underneath Russia as Chaos Stan. And of course, one of the reasons it was Chaos Stan was because it was a policy of the United States government from the 1960s to use Islamic radicals to destabilize Russia, as they're using Islamic radicals to destabilize the West now. It is the same people. The people who are our government are doing that same thing. I think it's brilliant that Trump has rented an Iowa theater to show the movie 13 Hours for free to people. You know, this is a story, and we got an article up on Infowars.com that by Kurt Nemo says the real story of what happened in Libya will take down Hillary Clinton. It says, unfortunately, the film doesn't mention Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama. It avoids politics. It steps around the real reason for the CIA mission in Benghazi, and that was to ship CIA arms from Libya to Syria. How about that? See, that's where it all began. It was going on there. And, of course, it's going to miss that. And this is going to be a very powerful movie because, you know, movies are visceral. As Stalin said, one death is a tragedy. A million deaths are just a statistic. If you watch a movie, then it becomes especially concerning, especially when you watch the death and by betrayal of heroes. And that's what we're going to see in this movie. That's really what happened. But I think the sad thing is that we've had a death and betrayal of our Constitution. We've had a death and betrayal of our nation, morally and politically. And, of course, I guess, you know, instead of it being a statistic, it's just going to be an historical footnote that America died when we ignored the Constitution thoroughly. And that's what I was talking about. That's the real issue behind what's going on with the natural-born citizen. And let me just read you one more quote before we move on to another subject. In 1868, when they wrote the 14th Amendment, many people take that out. One of the commentators there, and one of the key authors, Senator Howard, who wrote most of the 14th Amendment, said, "This will not, of course, include persons who are born in the United States who are foreigners." How do you get born in the United States and be a foreigner? Well, that's because your parents aren't American citizens. Okay? So do some research. The Constitution matters. We can understand what it says. And if you're going to run for office and you're a constitutional scholar, so you're going to be originalist, explain that to us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. In the next segment, we're going to have Alex Jones joining us with a special report on what's going on with the economy. As I continue to watch this, it's still about 3 to 3.5% down. The major markets here in the United States, of course, are going to be closed on Monday. That's part of the panic. People are concerned that the Asian markets are going to continue to drop over the weekend, that they're going to drop on Monday. And they're trying to offload this on this Friday before the markets close. That's a big part of what's going on with that. We're going to have Gerald Celente as well as Peter Schiff joining us later in the program. Gerald Celente is going to join us at the bottom of the hour. And then Peter Schiff after him. We're going to talk to them about the economy. Also, we'll ask them about what they thought about the debate last night and the real State of the Union, not the one that was at Fantasyland that was given to us by Barack Obama. One of the things that came up that did not come up in the debate last night but came up today on the news, Justin Amash has offered a bill to repeal the new cybersecurity law. That would be CISA. He points out, he introduced this bill on Wednesday to repeal CISA. He says this is the worst anti-privacy law since the USA Patriot Act. He says it gives businesses legal protections to encourage them to share more data on hacking threats with the government. See, that's the whole thing. You offer immunity to the corporations to give up the data that they've collected on other people under the legal fiction that that's not my data, but that data belongs to Verizon or to AT&T, and they can do with it whatever they wish. And so then they would come back. Some of them would say, well, I don't feel comfortable with this. I feel like I've got some moral responsibility, some legal liability if I violate the privacy of my customers. And so they say, okay, you don't have that anymore, so turn it over. That's what's really behind this. And as Amash says, he said the Cybersecurity Act was negotiated in secret by a few members of Congress. It was added quietly to the 2009-page omnibus bill to avoid scrutiny. Most representatives are probably unaware they even voted for this legislation because they've offered it multiple times. They offered CISPA 2 times. They offered SOPA, ACTA, PIPA. You know, they had all these different variations, all doing the same thing, removing liability for corporations so they can pressure them to give up the information. Of course, we had a short question on this last night during the debate. They asked Jeb Bush about it. He goes, well, I would get Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple and other corporations in here. We'd talk about encryption and privacy and that sort of thing. And it's like, oh, really? So that's the way in a Bush administration, let's be honest, the way it would happen in virtually all these guys' administrations. They wouldn't consult the Constitution. They would talk to the multinational corporate bosses who run them and say, well, what do you have? What can we negotiate? How can we sell this to the public? How can we make this palatable to them? I know I've got my own goals. I want to know what everybody is doing. You want to make money, right? We can make that happen. So let's work out something on how we can keep these people under our feet and pick their pockets. Now, joining Justin Amash in this effort is a bipartisan group of privacy-minded, civil liberties-focused co-sponsors, including Democrat John Conyers, Democrat Zoe Lofgren, Republicans Thomas Massey from Kentucky, Ted Poe from Texas, and Jared Paulus from Colorado. Thank you. Regardless of what party you're in, we need to join with people on these fundamental issues of obeying the law, obeying our privacy, obeying the Fourth Amendment, and not turning this country into this surveillance state that it's becoming. And that's one of the things that concerned me yesterday as well. Just before the debate, we saw Ted Cruz had shifted his position on Ed Snowden. He had originally said, if it's the case that the federal government is seizing millions of personal records, yes, it is the case, Mr. Cruz, about law-abiding citizens. And if it is the case that there are minimal restrictions on accessing or reviewing those records, yes, that is the case, Mr. Cruz. Then I think Mr. Snowden has done a considerable public service. But now he says, today we know that Snowden violated federal laws, that his actions materially aided terrorists. Now, that's not true, Mr. Cruz. And so he says, under the Constitution, giving aid to our enemies is treason. So he joins the chorus that wants to call Snowden a traitor. No, he exposed criminal activity by the traitors who run our government. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Alex Jones breaking down economic news.
Ladies and gentlemen, you read the headlines. You heard it come out of my mouth hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times the last 2 years, really longer than that, since 2008. That a global economic designed meltdown was coming, and out of it they're going to announce a new planetary government backed up by strategic drawing rights, SDRs. It's just digital made-up money backed up with carbon taxes, digital money transfer taxes, VATs paid by regional government combines into the IMF, World Bank, International Bank of Settlements, controlled by the WTO, and all of these secret agreements like the TPP that are now public after they put them in place, that transfer all power to unelected corporate boards that have diplomatic and corporate immunity, and for all intents and purposes are about 95% tax exempt. They put so many taxes on us, it's hard for them to avoid them all, but it's incredible. Whether it's the socialist government of France, caught all these Swiss bank accounts, not paying taxes, and then they don't get in trouble, or the EU bureaucrats not paying taxes, look it up. They're unelected. The EU Parliament is advisory to the permanent bureaucracy that's now creating an international police force and controls NATO. I mean, you want to be conquered by 21st century tyranny? It isn't Napoleon, it isn't Hitler, it isn't the Russians. It's this global corporate combine. It's the new world order. And I've put out a bunch of Facebook mentions, a bunch of YouTubes the last month saying global collapse imminent, emergency. I've talked to top elites. You see all the high-powered folks that come on the show, from Congress people to famous special forces commanders, to top movie producers, to major bankers. I mean, for every person you see on the show or hear on the show, there's 5 or 6 prominent I talked to off record. I was told 5 years ago by a billionaire defense contractor owner, multi-billionaire, that they were leaving the United States, and then I had 4 to 5, maybe 6 years until it was, quote, gone. And they were going to New Zealand and also the Cook Islands with their money. And they knew who I was, came to me, talked to me. They saw me in a lawyer's office in a building. I kind of knew, I knew I'd seen them before, but then I looked them up. I was like, oh, my God, that is who they said they were. I had like a 15-minute conversation with them. And I said, well, what is it that's happening? And they said, you already know. You already say it. You're going to be getting very popular. You're going to be getting very big. You're going to be getting very, very famous. And I was like, well, I don't want to get famous off that. And she said, look, you're just dead on. Now we're here. Walmart's closed hundreds of stores. 100 million Americans are on some form of welfare, and 98 million are out of the workforce. They're flooding us with unskilled workers on record to drive down wages and bankrupt us. Obamacare is designed to bankrupt the country. The Cloward and Piven, they're just doing everything to bankrupt our fracking industry. People demonize it all day. Okay, it was the only economy we had left. We're sitting here watching all this happen, and Obama's on the news last week saying, you know, anybody that says that we don't have the best economy and it's not great, you know, is basically full of bull. I'm going to go show you the clip in a moment, the actual quote. It's like he said, there are no ISIS in America, no threat, and 2 days later there's an attack in San Bernardino. So if he says up, it's down. If he says left, it's right. If he says black, it's white. If he says it's polka dotted, it's not. I mean, it's incredible, and it's on purpose lying to us. They also say, well, don't be gloom and doom. That'll destroy confidence. It'll get worse. That's not what's doing this. I've seen thousands of comments over the years saying, you're gloom and doom. You're going to cause the collapse. I didn't cause the derivatives to be 1+ quadrillion in 2008. Now it's 2.2 as of last year. We haven't gotten new numbers in 6 months. I mean, you're talking about mega, massive information here. It's hundreds of times all the real wealth in all the world. It's impossible to pay. It's not our debt. It was created. It was absolutely set up and developed so that we could be tied to all that debt, bail out the big banks, and in bailing it out, we become their slaves and in debt to them. This is economic warfare. And look, I don't respond to the trolls, but there's national trolls, the New York Times and others, you know, saying I'm a fear peddler, fear porn, Gerald Celente is. No, we're not. The fundamentals are 2 + 2 = 4. And everything has been to shut down small businesses. Everything has been to vertically integrate and consolidate power. Everything has been to take over local banks and real lenders. The big banks get their own free money now. They don't even lend anymore. And it's getting worse. This is a controlled economic takeover. That's the problem. It'd be one thing if it was just a normal deal, but 29 was staged. That's come out in Congress. This is totally staged. It's going to be worse, probably. It's going to be real bad. It's happening for sure, but it's going to be bad. They can't pump up the markets forever, and they're just giving themselves the money when they do it and destroying the overall economy. So you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Now, we're going to play this report on the show today as well as David Knight and others break it down, and they've already played this clip on the show today. But here is Obama, you know, openly saying, anyone who says economy declining is lying. Okay, here you go.
Anyone claiming that America's economy is in decline is peddling fiction.
And then he goes on to say it's wonderful when all the fundamentals are the opposite. Now, for the globalist, things are wonderful because they're consolidating control. They're crony capitalists. Look at this. Walmart to close 629 stores. CNBC, or I said that wrong, 269 stores. And they're going to lay off 16,000 people. There's the article from Zero Hedge up on Infowars.com. So check that out for yourself. Look, I can show you a bunch of clips. I can sit here and go over it with you all day long. All I'm telling you is they tell you, believe in confidence, believe everything's fine, get into debt, go along with the system, everything's going to be wonderful, trust the system, on and on and on. And the more we trust the system, the more we go along with what they say, the worse it gets, because it's a plan to take over the world and use economic depravity and economic deprivation to control people. This is their own strategy, written by Carol Quigley in 1967 in Tragedy and Hope, a battle plan for the CIA and the State Department, run by these foreign interests. Our country got taken over in 1947 by the National Security Act by foreign interests. We've had a soft coup for a long time inside the country, building their world government empire with our blood, our sweat, our tears, our money, our treasure, our young men, and now women. And then we get the blame for all of it. The globalists hate us more than anybody. They want to mount the republic's head on the wall after they're done sucking us dry like a big fat spider eating a weevil. Stop being fools. Stop buying into the propaganda. Break your conditioning. Realize that lying to yourself and submitting to them only allows them to screw you over. The awakenings happen. I'm not talking to our general audience, but I'm talking to other people out there that don't get it. You can't side with the system delusionally and get out of this, and then it's going to be nice to you. It's predatory. You're delusional. You have Stockholm syndrome, where the victim worships their accuser, worships their captors, worships their enslavers, worships the tyrants, worships the parasites, worships the criminals, worships the scum that are raping them and robbing them, and always telling them how they're bad. And it's something that women historically go under Stockholm syndrome more than men. It's biological, it's evolutionary, that women would get captured and taken over, and they go, oh, okay, and okay, you're right. You just killed my husband and kids. You know, you're a foreign army that came in 5,000 years ago. I'll go ahead and bow down to you. I guess it's right. Oh, you know, King Booga, you're so great, and hug them. Men aren't supposed to do that, folks, and men have been turned into complete emasculated cowards and slaves. And you act worse than women. There are a lot of tough women in history, too. It's just statistically, they go under Stockholm syndrome a lot quicker, a lot easier, learned helplessness. But now, men are pathetic. It's time for you to get up and stand up, break your conditioning, get involved. Physical courage isn't what it's about. It's about mental courage to admit what's happened, to be involved, to not care if you're ridiculed. Because as Mark Twain said in the beginning, a patriot is a scarce man, hated, feared, and scorned. But in time when his cause succeeds, the timid join him, because then it costs nothing to be a patriot. Break your conditioning now, get involved, wake up, and reach out to others. You are the resistance. Or just bend over and get ready, because the globalist ideology, if you're going to bend over, if you're going to submit, if you're going to get down on your knees, like Patrick Henry said to his enemies, crouch down and lick the hand that feeds you. Go peacefully from us. Forget that you are our countrymen. As for me, give me liberty, give me death. I don't know what course you're going to take, but I'm going to stand up and fight this. I sit here and I look at you guys. I just want you to understand, you need to know who your captors are. They're eugenicists that want to slowly poison you and dumb you down before you die, and you never even know they killed you because they'd already stolen your intellect, your mind, and your soul. You know I'm telling the truth. You know we've got our finger on the zeitgeist. Join us and let humanity go to the next level. Don't bow on your knees to these murderers.
The United States of America, right now, has the strongest, most durable economy in the world. Anyone claiming that America's economy is in decline is peddling fiction.
Yeah. Who's peddling fiction? Okay, today we see that Goldman Sachs is going to pay $5 billion for the last crisis. It was back in 2008. That's civil monetary penalties, cash payments, and $1.8 billion in consumer relief in the form of mortgage forgiveness. You know what that is? That's where they come in and say, you know those taxes that we said you're going to have to pay on the loss that you took on your home when the bank took it away? We said, take away your home, and now you pay taxes, not the bank. Well, we'll forgive that. How kind, how generous. They're going to take that away. We'll be right back with more economic news. We'll be joined at the bottom of the hour with Gerald Celente. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show on this Friday, January 15th, 2016. As I'm watching the markets, they are still down from the major down opening that they had. They opened up just under 2% down. Now they're almost 3% down. The Dow and the S&P, the NASDAQ is down 3.25%. We're going to be talking to Gerald Celente in the next segment about the economy, about the debate last night, and what the true state of the union, state of our economy is. I want to let you know real quickly that we have a special at InfoWars Store today. It ends the 30 to 40% off of select storable food for the next 24 hours only. We're giving you 30 to 40% off the retail price of all InfoWars Select Storable Food at InfoWarsStore.com. InfoWars Select Foods have a shelf life of 25 years. They're made and packaged in the U.S., great tasting, and the thing about the packaging is, of course, it's a safe plastic. It's not a BPA, and you can easily reseal that after you've opened it, but it'll last 25 years with that. And as you know, food prices and everything else, the prices are going up around the world. Now is a great time to prepare for the future, to prepare for emergencies. Stock up. 30 to 40% off all InfoWars Select Storable Food at InfoWarsStore.com for the next 24 hours only. Also, we have the special for this week only, Survival Shield X2 Nascent Iodine and Silver Bullet. If you buy Survival Shield X2, you can get the Silver Bullet Colloidal Silver for 50% off and a free calendar. That's going to just be through this week as well. Again, you can find that at InfoWarsStore.com. Now, as Alex was talking about in the last segment, how this is a long-term engineered takeover. There's another aspect, something you should be concerned about, and I believe we've been seeing this developing in a slow mode, but now they're stepping on the accelerator when it comes to robot cars that will be controlled by the government. Now, you understand, most of the people who listen to us, just how dangerous it is to have gun control. Do you realize how dangerous it is to have the government control and track and tax all of your transportation? Are you concerned about that? You should be. And you should be concerned about the fact that in spite of the fact that these early tests of Google cars in California showed that they had a very high accident rate compared to humans, had 11 accidents out of 6 years. They had another, I think it was about 350 some odd issues where the driver in the car had to take over control of the self-driving car to keep from having an accident. Nevertheless, they don't want to have the restriction put on them, as the California Department of Transportation said they were going to do. They don't want to have the restriction of saying you're going to have a human backup driver there as you test these things. Now, the long-term issue with this is not just whether or not you would like to have the option of having a drudgery job of your daily commute drive you automatically to your office or whatever. No, the reality is that you're not going to have a choice. As I pointed out when I cut that 1 minute, is with Obamacare, you heard, if you like your insurance, you can keep your insurance. And with Obamacare, I'm sure that you can keep your car, except you're just not going to be able to afford the insurance. They're going to drive you out of the car with insurance. So we're seeing these factors come together. Alex has been talking about this a long time. I've been talking about this since I came to InfoWars, the fact that they're going to use insurance rates to push away private ownership of automobiles. And they're going to put sensors in the cars to track and tax all of your movement. And once they get rid of private cars, everybody is going to have to rely on a few companies, perhaps like Uber, that are going to be the only ones who own cars. Doesn't that sound like the Trans-Pacific Transatlantic Partnership, where only a few mega multinational corporations own everything, and we just pay them rent all the time? Okay, we don't own land, we don't own cars, we don't own homes, we just pay the banks, we pay the insurance companies, we pay the car companies in the future for everything. That's one of the reasons why Detroit is jumping on this. You understand, it's a lot more profitable to rent something to somebody than it is to sell something to somebody. When you rent something to somebody, they never stop paying you. When you sell it to them, you can make some money, but that's it. No, they want to rent stuff to people. So, and they're going to jockey for position with the government. Let me read you what happened yesterday at the Detroit Auto Show. And, of course, this is something that had been tipped was going to be in the State of the Union. They did not talk about it. Nevertheless, the head of the Transportation Secretary, Anthony Fox, went to Detroit and met with had a press conference there with the major automobile manufacturers talking about sustainable transportation. Now, when you see the word sustainable used by the government, you need to take the safety off your gun because they're coming for something that you have. And they say, we're going to regulate this at the national level, just like they wanted to do with GMOs. They were concerned that GMOs are being shut down by regulation at the state and local level. People are concerned about safety. Same thing with this. So they're going to get rid of them at the national level. They say they're going to have a government industry tag team. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's called crony capitalism. It's called making you a serf. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Gerald Celente. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and joining me in this half hour is Gerald Celente. In the next hour, we're going to be joined by Peter Schiff. We have economic forecasters on to break down what's going on. And, of course, if you're looking at the market or listening to the news, you know that the market's opened up way down today, all the indices here in America, and they have continued to go down. As I'm looking at this right now, we're just under 500 points down on the Dow. The Dow and the S&P are down just about 3%. The NASDAQ's down about 3.5%. Gerald Celente is an American trend forecaster, publisher of Trends Journal, business consultant, and an author. He also describes himself as a political atheist. In other words, he is not a true believer in any of these parties. He is an independent thinker. He is a citizen of the world. You can find him at trendsresearch.com. That's where you can find Trends Journal. Joining us now is Gerald Celente. Gerald, what is going on here with the markets?
Well, it's what we had forecast. The panic is on. Our last broadcast of 2015 on December 30th, The Trends in the News broadcast was the panic of 2016.
Yes.
Of course, I've been on with you and Alex throughout the year. And in early August, we made the forecast that the markets would unravel this year, and they have. There was no Santa Claus rally. It's been one decline down. It was a flat year overall on the Dow, but the decline had already begun. And when you listen to the media, first they blame China, and then they blame oil. It's one of our top trends of 2016 that we came out with well over a month ago into the new year, looking ahead. And it's the Great Recession that's global. It's a global recession going on. That's why commodity prices are falling. It's not only China. It's a lack of demand around the world, and it's a very simple equation. Far too few have much too much, and far too many have much too little. We all know about the 0.01% that controls the world's wealth, and I'm not making that number up. You have 85 people that have more dough than half the world's population of 3.25 billion people. 85. Take a trip here in the USSA. And I was listening to some of your commentaries on how they take more of our rights away, and we're basically just slaves for the multinationals. Well, I call it Slavelandia. So look what's happening in Slavelandia. You have a gap between the rich and the poor that's wider than it was during the Gilded Age. You have 400 people worth $2.5 trillion, while the middle class is now a minority, while our real median household income is below 1999 levels. So then the people are saying, yeah, but with those gas prices down, well, you know, people could go out and buy more. Not if everything else is going up. You mentioned about the Obamacare ripoff, where we, the people, are being forced to buy insurance from private companies. The merger of state and corporate powers, by the way, it's called fascism.
Yeah, they call it tag teaming. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascism.
Yeah.
So now what's going on is that the people don't have the money, and it's worldwide. So that's why you're seeing it's not only oil. For example, let's go back to the Great Depression, and we're in one now. For all those, what is it, the labor force participation rate down to 1970s levels, when women weren't in the workforce like they are now, and it's still that bad? So when you look at the depression that's going on with so many people, you can have low prices. It's called a depression. Yeah, if a dozen eggs only cost a quarter during the depression, you still couldn't afford them. So you could have low oil prices, but you have all your other expenses as real wages continue to decline when accounting for real inflation. What we're going through, this is the beginning, this is the panic of 2016. And I want to make this clear, David. In November of 2007, I took out the domain name, the Panic of 08. That's how sure I was. Oh. We were so sure about this panic that we named it at the end of the year. You're going into the new year, and this equity market panic has begun. Here we are.
Wow, that's amazing. And as you pointed out, when people look at things like the Chinese market and oil, those are symptoms of the greater problem, which is the depression that is underlying all of this. How deep do you think this is going to go? How far do you think this is going to go? I mean, is there any optimism on your part that we're going to come out of this? Because you talk about the concentration of wealth as they have become the only owners of not only wealth, but they want to be the people who own everything, even the only ones who own cars, okay? We're going to have, you know, the banks literally own our homes, and we pay them rent. We pay rent in terms of property tax. We're going to have the same situation with cars, with private car ownership disappearing as well. They want to own everything, and once they do, are they going to have a society where they just have robots provide for their needs and use the robots as slaves instead of human slaves that they've got now?
Both. They'll use both. And the people, there's such a lack of courage in this country. And I'm not talking, of course, I mean, there's what you guys are doing, what we're doing, a number of others. Peter Schiff is going to be on later. Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, David Stockman, Dr. Andrew Judge Andrew Napolitano. There are a number of us out there, but we're in the vast minority. Most of the people clap and applaud to their, their presidents, their prime ministers, and chancellors.
Yeah.
So until the people rise to a greater level and stop, understanding, to begin to understand they weren't put on this earth to take orders from lowlifes, then that's the only way we're going to have the change. And I mentioned briefly yesterday with Alex, this is a time not only for a third party, but a fourth and a fifth. I mean, this is watching the presidential reality show last night is an insult to anyone's intelligence. Every time you ask them a question, they go into their campaign spiel without giving an answer.
Oh yeah, that's a great tactic. That's a very deliberate debate tactic to not answer the question. And if you go on about some other topic, they'll come back and say, but you didn't answer my question. All right, I'll answer your question now so they get more time. That's a tactic that they use. What do you think about the fact, as you mentioned yesterday, we've had 20+ thousand bombs dropped by Obama all over the world. He can't shed a tear about that. But, of course, Republicans don't think that was enough. They want even more. Every time they go to another candidate, it's like, oh, I'm going to be tougher than these other guys. I'm going to be tougher than Obama. I'm going to go to war with the Russians. I'm going to do, whatever.
I get a kick out of it. I see little Marco Rubio and Teddy Cruz, for example, shooting there, and Christie. What a joke. I mean, you put all these three guys in a paper bag, they wouldn't be able to fight their way out of it. And they talk so tough.
Yeah, especially Christie.
So these little boys of nothing. If you put them all together, maybe they have the size of, cojones, the size of a mothball, So what I'm saying is they can take the people to war very easily. You've heard me say this before. When all else fails, they take you to war.
Yes. And
that is going to be the end game unless we change it. There is no stopping this economic decline. It should have happened. It should have happened, but it was stopped after the panic of 2008 because of all of the cheap money that they threw into the system with quantitative easing, a word and a system made up that never happened before, and zero interest rate policy. So now they've run out of tools.
That's right. And of course, they did the quantitative easing, they printed all this money, and then a lot of that, great majority of that, they didn't even put into the market. They kept at the banks and paid the banks massive amounts of interest on the money that they didn't even put out into the economy. If they had put it out, we probably would have had hyperinflation.
And the other fact of it is that the wealth created since the panic of 2008, 95% of it went to the 1%.
Yeah.
That's a fact.
Yeah.
So this is fascism. It's the merger of state and corporate powers. You go back to our trends journals going back to 2008, when Henry Paulson, I think was he playing roles in Frankenstein movies now, I think, the former CEO of Goldman Sachs and Bush's Treasury Secretary, when he gave us too big to fail. And again, in capitalism, there's no such thing as too big to fail. What happened was our headline was Wall Street hijacks Washington. It's a takeover.
Oh, yeah. They're not only too big to fail, they're too big to jail. I mean, this guy, El Chapo, that we've seen so much press about, his Sinaloa cartel had its own private window to launder money at HSBC. And, of course, the Obama administration's Justice Department, quote unquote, refused to prosecute them for money laundering, saying, well, it wouldn't serve to put any executives in jail or to pull their charter there. And as everybody pointed out, you're saying then that they're too big to jail. That's the kind of corruption that we see with this crony capitalism.
And those were essentially the words of the former Attorney General, Eric Holder, who's now back with that white shoe boy firm on Wall Street.
Yeah, go straight back there.
that protects the criminals. And you mentioned about not doing anything with HSBC. How about the 6 banks that were convicted, not charged, convicted of felonies for rigging the LIBOR rate, for rigging the Forex markets, 5.3 trillion a day, the interest rates, currency markets, and not one head rolled. But for us, the little people, you know, the guy just read, they're going to lower that alcohol level to 1 drink.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have 1 drink and you get in that car, we're going to get you. Don't go over that yellow line. Why
here in Austin,
you had your brights on.
Here in Austin, they've got forced blood draws, and you know, if you resist or you say you don't want to, they've taken people down, strapped them to a gurney, pulled out their blood, found they had 0 alcohol level. But that's the kind of fascist tyranny that we're looking at. You're talking about, yeah, they're going to lower it to 1 drink, and that's something that's coming from the feds. They want to do that nationwide. I mean, this is worse than the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit. I'm somebody who doesn't drink. And it bothers me because I know that I'm still possibly going to get pulled over and have a blood drawn without my consent.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying. It's all tied together. So going back to the economy, I mean, what's the Dow doing now as we speak? Do you know?
Right now, the Dow is down 2.72%, 445 points.
445 points. And what's the NASDAQ at?
NASDAQ is down 3.2%, 147 points.
And what's it at?
Sorry? S&P is down 2.5%.
No, what's it at? Is it 4,000 what?
44.68.
44.68. The NASDAQ was at 5,000 in 2000. And here we are 15 years later, 16 years later, and look where it's at.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you got people like Chris Christie saying to the baby boomers who are losing their 401ks to all of this manipulation, saying, well, you know what, we're going to take away the money that we promised we would pay you in this Ponzi scheme called Social Security.
Oh, yeah, as they get all their benefits.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so what we're looking at, when we're looking at this market decline, this is unprecedented. The decline in oil prices now that we're seeing, we're almost down almost like 20% in the new year. 20%. So what we're looking at is the worst oil collapse since OPEC really became OPEC, 1970s. Now we have to put it together into where we're going. When I said when all else fails, they take you to war. Look what's going on in the Middle East. These dictatorships that they like to call the kings and the emirs, these countries are in deep trouble. They shut the people up during the Arab Spring by dumping more dough into their coffers over there. And now they're pulling it back. Saudi Arabia, remember, now we're looking at oil at around $29 a barrel. Saudi Arabia needs $100 a barrel just to break even.
Yeah.
You're going to see destabilization as they keep spreading war in Yemen and as they have in Syria. Now you're looking at Turkey exploding as that economy is crashing along with the Turkish lira. Then come back to the states. Then go back to oil. Go to all the states and all the cities and all the counties that became enriched with the shale boom. Go back to transportation, what happened with the railroads and all of these cars that were being put online. I'm saying this because of all the debt that has been taken on to fuel the boom. When you put in the mining sector and the energy sector, you're looking at about 20% of the junk bonds in the United States in those sectors. And now those bonds for those companies that have gone bankrupt are selling for pennies on the dollar with more to come.
Wow. And of course, when you look at Saudi Arabia, as you pointed out there in Yemen, kind of a Vietnam war where they're attacking that country. Of course, our press is very silent about that. They're also not talking about the fact that all these people that they executed right after the new year began, I think they waited so they wouldn't set a new Guinness record for beheadings. But all these people that they executed, especially this one particular guy, that has created a massive sectarian division in the country. So they've got a lot of political turmoil within their country. They're fighting a Vietnam type of war. And of course, there are big buddies with the petrodollar that Nixon and Kissinger put in. That's really what's a key part of what's been propping up our fiat currency throughout the decades. Along with the Federal Reserve, they've got the Saudis coming in with a petrodollar. That's all about to collapse as well, isn't it?
It is. And when you made a good point, too, about the revolution going on in there and the social unrest in Saudi Arabia after they executed, of course, the Shia cleric. And where most of the Shias live? On the eastern end of Saudi Arabia. Where is most of the oil? Right over there.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, the Yemenis that they're slaughtering, probably up to over 10,000 about now, destroyed the most, the poorest country in the Middle East, and they've done nothing to warrant the attack, which, by the way, was launched from Washington, D.C. by the Saudi ambassador on March 26, 2015, and the United States is part and parcel to it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm mentioning that also because you have about 4 million Yemenis living in Saudi Arabia, and a lot of them work in the oil fields. So what you can see a major catastrophe happening with Saudi oil that may temporarily boost up the price. The Middle East has exploded. It's not about to explode. It has exploded. It just hasn't made the news, just as the financial crisis that we're going through now in the equity markets has not.
Well, we got to go to break. Thank you so much, Gerald. And, of course, stay with us. We're going to be right back with Gerald Celente. Trendsresearch.com is where you can find Trends Journal. We're going to be right back with more insights from Gerald Celente. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and we're talking to Gerald Celente. And, of course, we hear this battle of the British there. Of course, that was President Jackson who stood up to the Federal Reserve, didn't he, Gerald?
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
And he also said, one man of courage makes a majority.
There you go. Yeah. And, of course, it wasn't the Federal Reserve. I understand it was the National Bank at the time. And they said, yeah, we're going to have the National Bank. He said, well, the Supreme Court made their ruling. Let's see them enforce it. So it was, and we've been talking about the economy. What do people do right now with the, what is your advice to them? Of course, you want to have preservation of capital. What can somebody do if they've got a 401k and they see the stock market crashing because they have forced people to put their IRAs into Wall Street investments there? What can they do?
Well, of course, I can't give financial advice, so only speaking for myself. You're seeing a lot of people leaving it in cash. And I also, again, thinking for myself, GCs, 3Gs, guns, gold, and a getaway plan. So gold is really, to me, when you're looking at everything going down, gold is going up because it's the ultimate safe haven commodity as all the other ones are going down. I want to make this really clear. With the conditions going on now in the equity markets and the reality of a major crash happening, coupling on that, if there is, quote, a terrorist strike, false flag or real, you may not be able to get your money because they'll call, quote, a bank holiday. Isn't that lovely language? A holiday. You can't get your money, and they'll devalue it. And they're devaluing currencies around the world. You're looking at, you just saw what happened in Argentina. People say, should I own gold? Hey, how about if you live up there in Canada, not so far away? What's your loonie at? Oh, it's only down, what, to 70 cents against the dollar? Would you rather own gold? So what I'm saying, David, is prepare for the worst is my motto. If the worst doesn't happen, you lose nothing. Yeah. If the worst happens, you can lose everything if you didn't prepare for it. So I believe there are possibilities of bank closures if the panic goes in a direction where it's heading and continues. If on top of that there's, quote, a terrorist strike, false flag or real, because, and I say that without being a conspiracy theorist, because after all, remember the Maine? Hey, how about that Gulf of Tonkin incident that never happened? I'll tell you what, David, that Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction and ties to Al-Qaeda.
Yeah, that's right. That's a real fear. That's a real fear that they're going to ramp this up. And, of course, they have laid the groundwork for conflicts all over the country. And before we go to break, I want to tell you real quickly, in terms of talking about preparing, one of the things that you can do is to make sure that you've got food. And, of course, we have a special that's going to be ending today. 30 to 40% off InfoWars Select Storable Food. For the next 24 hours only, we're giving you 30 to 40% off the retail price of all InfoWars Select Storable Food at InfoWarsStore.com. It will last for 25 years. It has great and effective packaging that lets you open it and then reseal it for use within the same week. And you know that food prices are going up. They could cut down on who knows what's going to happen, as Gerald was just saying. You never know what's going to happen to your supply line. So certainly you need to have food as part of that. Again, you can get that 30 to 40% off all InfoWars Select Storable Foods at InfoWarsStore.com, and that's just for the next 24 hours. Now, we're going to come back in the next segment. Gerald's going to stay with us, and I want to get a little bit of his take on what he thinks is going to happen in the future with the Trans-Pacific Partnership and these other quote-unquote trade deals that are far more than trade deals that are coming up. And also his comments about what happened last night with the debates, where he thinks this is going to lead with politics. Is it going to help us at all, or is it a big sideshow? We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and we're talking to Gerald Celente in this segment, and we're going to be talking to Peter Schiff in the next segment. Of course, if you're following the economic news, you can see that there's been a huge decline in all the American indexes here. And, of course, that's going on across the world as we've been talking to Gerald Celente. We're going into a deeper depression, in his opinion. I agree, because the situations that we're seeing in this market, in the Chinese market, and the oil market are all symptoms of a deeper problem, and that is an economic slowdown that is global. That's something we should all be very concerned about. Gerald, as we were looking at the debate last night, and as you said to Alex Jones yesterday, it really is just a celebrity show. I call it Celebrity Big Brother. I couldn't really see that much difference between the guys who were on the stage last night. I mean, is there any hope in terms of getting any of these people elected that it's going to make any difference whatsoever? You talked about having a third-party option out there, but of course, they're going to shut that down in terms of people who are, I've seen many times working with the Libertarian Party, they get on the ballot in 50 states, and they're not allowed on the debate stage, or we do it at the state level. You can get on the ballot at state level. They still won't let you on the debate stage. Do we have any hope of getting a third or fourth or fifth party?
Well, if Spain could do it, if Italy could do it, if they could do it in other countries, why can't we? And it has to be a unified effort. And it never before in my career, and one of the ways I made my name in my book, Trend Tracking, back in the late 80s, far better than Megatrends, Time Magazine, I predicted there'd be a new third party in 1992. And I mentioned, for some strange reason, someone like Ross Perot. Mm-hmm. The conditions exist today better than they were back then. And what Donald Trump has done is to show what really a freak show it is. As I pointed out, you know, this was the cover of our magazine, the Trends Journal, back in the spring of 2015. Cowards, liars, freaks, and fools, welcome to the presidential reality show. And that was before Trump got into it. So what he's done is he exposed, really, as the term that he uses that I totally agree with, that the people running the government are incompetent and stupid. So if you have a new leader of the incompetents and stupids, it's not going to make a difference. It has to be a whole new way. And
is this something we do at the ground, from the ground up? I mean, I look at things like jury nullification. I look at state nullification. Everybody gets mesmerized like a cobra with a snake charmer about the presidential elections, and they completely ignore what's going on locally. And it's harder to track that because we all talk about what's going on at the national level. Nobody really talks about what's going on local level. You have to really dig to get that information.
Well, there's a reason for that, because of the consolidation of the media.
Yeah.
You have these private equity groups that have bought up all the newspapers. Matter of fact, they have centralized locations right where you are over there, where they aggregate the news, and the same stuff goes to the newspapers that they own all over the world. They don't even have copy editors anymore in most of these smaller newspapers. Mm-hmm. So you're not getting local reporting anymore. Those days are gone. So it's up to the people. Again, if they could do it in Spain, if they could do it in Italy, we could do it here. The opportunity exists now more than ever. Yeah, I just want to backtrack on one thing, and listening to what you were saying about storing up on food and going back to what's going on with the economy. And again, it's a crisis mode, but the people are detached from it because a lot of people aren't in the markets like they used to be. It's only now for the very rich.
Yeah.
And so to prepare and prevail and prosper, It's having your food supply.
Absolutely.
It's having a getaway plan. It's having your hand on your money.
And it's understanding where the trends are going. And if you want to keep up with that, you can go to trendsresearch.com. We've been talking to Gerald Celente, publisher of Trends Journal. Thank you so much, Gerald, for joining us.
Always great being on with you, David. Thanks for having me. And
Thank you.
Give my best to Peter, please.
Thank you. We will. We'll be right back with Peter Schiff. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. We're going to be talking to Peter Schiff here in just a moment. And, of course, this new year, 2016, is off to a horrible start, as we just talked to Gerald Celente. He said he believes that we're headed for a greater depression coming up this year. With that in mind, you need to do what you can to prepare for yourself, prepare for your family. We're trying to help you to do that, as well as to support our operation. We have some sales that we're offering at InfoWars Life and InfoWarsStore.com. We have Survival Shield X2, our nascent iodine. If you buy that, you can get Silver Bullet, our colloidal silver, for 50% off. Plus, you can get a free calendar thrown in. That's a special that we've got this week only. Again, you can look at both of these products, Survival Shield X2 and Silver Bullet. Both have an average rating of 4.8 stars out of over 1,500 reviews at InfoWarsLife.com. Again, that's 50% off Silver Bullet when you buy Survival Shield X2, and you get a free calendar. And the calendar has monthly specials that will be happening throughout the year. Also ending today, just for the next 24 hours only, we have 30 to 40% off InfoWars Select Storable Food. That's a great way to prepare. This storable food has a shelf life of 25 years. It's made and packaged in the U.S., and it is great packaging. If you take a look at that on our site, it's something that is very useful, but great food, all natural, no GMOs. Again, you can get that for 30 to 40% off all InfoWars Select Storable Food at InfoWarsStore.com for just the next 24 hours. I want to go to Peter Schiff. He's going to be our guest for the next half hour. He's an American businessman, investment broker, author, financial commentator. I'm sure you've seen him. He's a frequent guest on many financial TV shows. He's a former host of the Peter Schiff Show, now an internet podcast called The Wall Street Unspin. And, of course, many people know of his father, who just recently passed away, Irwin Schiff. And I've seen Irwin Schiff, Mr. Schiff, I've seen your father many times at the Libertarian Party conventions, explaining to people what was going on with the income tax system. I really, my sympathies to you, and I really do appreciate what your father did within his life. And, of course, you can also find Mr. Schiff at Europac.com. What do you make of what's going on in the markets? We've seen them open up down a great deal today and dropping even more. Every day seems to be bringing even worse economic news.
Well, this is exactly what I've been saying was going to happen. I've been coming on Alex's Jones now regularly for the last several months, and this is exactly what I said was going to happen. I said that if the Federal Reserve raised interest rates, that the market would tank. That was one of the reasons I thought they wouldn't raise rates, because I thought they could figure this out. But apparently I gave them too much credit. So they raised interest rates, and the markets are tanking. Also, the economic news is horrific. I mean, if you look at the data that came out today, we are clearly in a recession now. The question is, how long have we been in recession? Did it start a few months ago, or is it just starting this month? But we're back in a recession, and Celente is right. It is going to be a horrible recession. I think it's going to be worse than the Great Recession. So it will be a greater recession, and it's because of everything the Federal Reserve did to mitigate the damage back then. They just postponed the pain to a later date. And unfortunately, this is the later date, and the pain is about to begin. And it's very ironic because you had President Obama just give his ridiculous State of the Union address where he said everything is fantastic. You know, it's the greatest economy ever. And I think he gave those same marching orders to Janet Yellen and her cohorts at the Federal Reserve, because they keep trying to pretend that everything is great too, because they don't want to admit they were wrong to raise rates. Of course, the real mistake was cutting them in the first place, because all they did is inflate a gigantic bubble, and now they've pricked it.
They cut them, and then they left it down for a very long time. And, of course, as we saw with Alan Greenspan rolling up to the 2008 bubble that they created and then burst. I mean, he continued to cut interest rates over a long period of time, and then he continued to raise interest rates until they burst that bubble. But now it appears that it only took the very first interest rate, and now it's busting that bubble, isn't it?
That's because it's a much bigger bubble. You know, the bigger the bubble, the smaller the pin. You need to pop it. And so the question is, when is the Fed going to acknowledge the weakness in the economy, and what are they going to blame it on? Because, of course, they have to pretend that some external factor is what caused it, and there's no way anybody could have possibly predicted it, even though it was one of the easiest things to predict. I think this is even easier than the financial crisis, which I also predicted, and which the Fed was oblivious to. Remember, even after the real estate bubble burst, they still didn't recognize the problem. They still didn't even see it was a bubble. So they don't know until all the wheels have fallen off the bus. And right now, that's exactly what's happening. They're still in denial. But I think that sometime in the next few months, they're going to have to launch QE4. They're going to have to reduce that rate hike. They're going to go back down to zero. And I think Congress is also going to come out with a huge stimulus bill that's going to include tax cuts for the middle class and massive increases in government spending. Everybody's going to vote for it because everybody's going to be afraid to oppose it. And it's going to send the budget deficit skyrocketing. And it's going to make it more ironic that, President Obama tried to claim credit for reducing the deficit. The deficit in his last year of office could easily be bigger than the $1 trillion deficit in his first year. And of course, the national debt doubled under President Obama. So he is the biggest deficit spender of all time. In fact, he will be a bigger deficit spender than every president that preceded him, from George Washington to George Bush.
Wow. And of course, one of the things that was also, I think, pretty predictable was the fact that they would not choose to audit the Fed, because that is really at the center of all of this. But we're not even allowed to look behind the curtain with all of this. That's, to me, the most amazing thing. And, of course, the thing that they never talk about in the debates, unless you've got Rand Paul there, and, of course, he wasn't there last night. So the Fed wasn't there. They're all talking about how they're going to have different levels, where their brackets are for income taxes, what their percentages are going to be, whether they're going to be flat or progressive or whatever. That's just really rearranging the chairs on the Titanic, isn't it?
Yeah, and for nobody wants to look behind the curtain there at the Fed. It's like, if you're eating at a fast food restaurant, you don't want to go into the kitchen and actually see what they're making. And, and especially since they're about to have to pull out the stops, because they're going to have to do even more crazy stuff this time, because the problem is much bigger. See, everybody wants to pretend that the Fed solved our problem. They didn't solve anything. The market would have solved our problems had the Fed allowed it, but the Fed didn't. The Fed prevented the market from working, and we had 7 years of 0% interest rates and 3 rounds of quantitative easing. And as a result, the economy today is far more screwed up than it was, 7 years ago. The only difference is we still have all the low-paying service sector jobs that our college graduates have been able to land during this Obama recovery. But the jobs are going to start to go away quickly, right there. The service sector is going to be hemorrhaging jobs. It was a wealth effect and the false perception of a recovery that created these jobs. But now that that phony wealth is evaporating and the perception is being replaced by reality, a lot of these jobs are going to be lost. In fact, I think we're maybe a few months away from some huge negative numbers in the non-farm payroll, a big spike up in unemployment, and then even when the Fed launches QE4 and cuts rates to zero, it's not going to turn the tide. I think the unemployment rate is going to be rising for years. I think we're headed back above 10% officially, and who knows where we'll be unofficially with all the people that just leave the labor market. But we've seen the best days as far as the low unemployment rate and the job creation. And of course, everybody is trying to hang their hat on this one data point. They're saying, oh, we can ignore all the bad news because look, the jobs market is strong. No, you have to ignore the jobs market and pay attention to all the other news, because the other news is forward-looking. The jobs news is backward-looking. The jobs are going to follow the other data. If corporate profits are collapsing, if retail sales are collapsing, if the stock market is in a bear market, all these companies are going to be cutting jobs. Look, Walmart today just announced they're going to have to shut down a bunch of stores. And the reason that Walmart wants to shut down stores is because they need to lower their labor costs, because they were just dumb enough to raise everybody's wages in order to placate the Obama administration, who said that their wages weren't high enough. So now they're going to give out pink slips.
And of course, part of the employment impediment in terms of getting more people jobs, in terms of the labor cost, is Obamacare. Yeah. And they use that. They spend these unemployment numbers by playing games as to the definition of who's unemployed, and then counting part-time jobs with this, and people, dumbing this down to 30 hours a week as a full-time job, so that a lot of people at the bottom end of the service sector have to get 2 jobs to make ends meet.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just absolutely incredible what they're doing. And if you look at what's going on in terms of not only exporting jobs, but importing workers, you see that all the job growth since 2008 has pretty much come to immigrants coming in. 17% of the labor force now is immigrant labor force.
Yeah,
so,
and it's the ultimate in irony in that President Obama passes a law that destroys full-time jobs, because in order to get out from under Obamacare, employers have to limit the number of full-time jobs that they have. And so now people lose their full-time jobs, but now those full-time workers are replaced by part-time workers. So now somebody used to have one really good job, and now they have 2 crappy jobs, where both those jobs still pay less than the one job he used to have. But now Obama gets credit for the extra job.
Yeah.
Because all they do in the jobs numbers is count the numbers. So 2 lousy jobs is better than 1 good job as far as Obama's concerned, but not as far as the guy who has to work these 2 lousy jobs for low pay. So he gets to destroy jobs and claim credit for creating jobs at the same time.
That's kind of like Common Core economics, isn't it, Peter?
Yeah,
yeah, that's what we get. And of course, in terms of what the banks did in terms of being bailed out, we just see Goldman Sachs being assessed a $5 billion fine. Here we are 7 years after the fact. They're still handing out some fines. I guess we're supposed to feel better that they're going to give us a little bit of mercy and not charge taxes to the people whose houses they've repossessed and all of this. Yeah.
Instead of fining them now, we should have just let them go bankrupt back then.
Yeah,
instead we bailed them out, and now we're asking for some of the bailout money back. But you know what? All these big banks, and I don't know if anybody's looking at the brokerage stocks. Goldman Sachs today is at a 52-week low. The stock's dropped, I don't know, what, 25, 30% from its high, and it's going to keep falling. And all the big banks are in trouble right here. I think they're going to need fresh rounds of bailout money. So a lot of that money that they just paid. A
little bit of schadenfreude there, right? We're going to be right back with Peter Schiff. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. In the next segment, we're going to be talking to Leanne McAdoo and Jakari Jackson. We're going to do a panel discussion going over the debate last night and what has happened in the follow-up to that. We're talking to Peter Schiff right now. He's with, you can find him at europac.com. That's his website. Of course, a frequent guest here with Alex and on many financial TV shows. As we're looking at the financial situation, we're down today between 2.5% and 3.5% on most of these indices, and it has been down all day. That appears to be the new normal for 2016. In this segment, Peter, I'd like to talk to you about the strength of the dollar. I mean, we were talking to Gerald Celente about the instability in Saudi Arabia. Of course, the petrodollar has been a big part of the reserve currency, the bubble that they created, if you will, in a way with the petrodollar when they took us off the gold standard. And now the key, the linchpin to that, of course, is Saudi Arabia. They've got a Vietnam-like war going on in Yemen. They have internal unrest, especially after all these executions at the beginning of the year. So there's a lot of instability there. What do you think about the strength of the dollar?
Well, it can't last. And first of all, as strong as the dollar's been recently, the yen and the euro are actually stronger. And, the Swiss franc, which is currency I like better than those. But what's driving the dollar is the false perception that the U.S. economy is still strong, that it's going to keep growing without recession, and that the Fed is going to follow through with all the rate hikes that it's been signaling that it's going to deliver. And I think this is a complete fantasy. I don't know why it's taking so many people so long to figure out that they've been wrong. But, this has happened in the past. When the dot-com bubble first burst, the initial reaction on Wall Street was, okay, it's no big deal. It's contained to technology and dot-coms and internet stocks. It's not going to affect the overall market, and it's not going to affect the economy. Well, they were wrong on both counts, because the overall market ended up going down by about 50%, and we went into a recession. And the NASDAQ, of course, went down 80%. Same thing happened in 2007, 2008, when the subprime market blew up. Nobody was concerned. Nobody at the Fed was worried. It was contained to subprime, they told us. And then even after it was obviously not contained, when there were problems in the entire housing market, then they said, well, it's just housing. That's just one part of the economy. The rest of the economy is going to be fine. The markets are going to be fine. And then it all blew up in the financial crisis of 2008 and the Great Recession. So people have a history of ignoring the obvious, even at the point where it's, flashing like a neon sign. So I've been warning about these problems now for years, and now, right, they're obvious. They're here. Everything I've been saying was going to happen is playing out in bold, in Technicolor, right before the eyes of people who have been oblivious, and now they still can't even see it. But, they're going to at some point, right? The market's not going to stop falling. The economic data is not going to improve, and ultimately the one lone piece of good news that they think they have is going to roll over too, and that's the job numbers. And people have to be prepared because the dollar is going to break. It's going to be a vicious decline when it happens, and gold's going to go the other way. What's been restraining gold has been the appeal of the dollar. But when people realize they bought a bill of goods when they were buying the dollar, they're going to rush to buy gold. And, you guys mentioned all these specials that you're having over at Alex Jones. We've been having a special this week at my gold company at Schiff Gold, and we're selling maple leafs, 1-ounce maple leafs, for as low as $33 over spot per coin, which that includes whatever our markup is. And that's about the cheapest price you're going to find anywhere. I don't think we've ever sold them that cheaply over spot. And so I'm not sure how many we have left because we bought a bunch of them, and But look, this could be the last chance to buy gold under 1,100. Because when people figure this out, there's a lot of people that are short gold that have to cover. A lot of people that haven't been buying, that are on the sidelines, they're going to try to buy it once. So this is going to be the big trade. I mean, the big short last time was subprime. The big short now is the dollar, and the way you play that is to be long gold. And the best way to do that is with real physical bullion. And again, I love the Canadian maple leaf. It's a great coin to own. And if you can get it for $33 over spot, with spot below 1,100, I mean, you should do it. So
you're talking about, you're talking about Obama essentially is the chief person who is ignoring reality. And we saw this with the State of the Union address the other night. How he's
not the only one.
Yeah, I know, but he's basically putting that narrative out. People are buying into that. If the Federal Reserve, you believe the Federal Reserve's first interest rate increase is the pin that has burst this bubble, if they just continue to ignore reality and continue to do interest rate increases, as we saw Alan Greenspan do, he did a series of increases. What do you think is going to happen to that? And we're just about, we got about 20 seconds.
Well, I don't think they're going to get that far because they're not supposedly going to raise interest rates until maybe March or April. But by then it might be obvious to everybody, including the members of the Fed, that we're in a recession. And how can they raise interest rates in a recession when they normally want to stimulate the economy, not sedate it? So this economy is so much weaker. The problems are so much bigger. We don't have the luxury of all those rate hikes that we had.
Thank you so much, Peter Schiff. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and joining me in this segment are Leanne McAdoo and Jakari Jackson. Of course, we did a live coverage of the debate last night as it was happening. We had live commentary and analysis, and now we're going to do some post-mortem of what happened in the aftermath of this. And I think it's I think the real takeaway of this, and the hopeful thing, is that we've seen now not just Donald Trump break free of the mainstream media control, but we've also seen Rand Paul do the same thing. I think it was a very smart move. I think it worked out very well for him last night. He did a Periscope, took questions on Periscope as the debate was going, and some very interesting questions, I think, that came up. Certainly much more interesting, I think, than what was going on the Fox debate.
Absolutely.
Agreed. Yeah. So that's a positive sign there. We need to find a way to get around the mainstream media's control, and certainly there have been a lot of articles recently about how the super PACs really don't have as much power and influence as they did because the millions and tens of millions of dollars that are being spent on television advertising really have not been effective, especially when you look at these Jeb Bush commercials.
Yeah.
We had one that we didn't play last night. We had to play it coming up, the one with Jeb Bush coming after Marco Rubio, playing "These Boots Are Made for Walking," making fun of him because he's shorter than Jeb. I mean, this is beyond
ridiculous.
Yeah, we didn't see this kind of stuff when people were running for class president in high school. They didn't get this petty.
Napoleon was pretty short too, I hear.
Exactly. But of course, Jeb is tall and he still has a Napoleon complex.
Right.
So go figure, right?
Yeah, he may be tall, but his poll numbers are pretty short.
Right.
So his poll numbers are getting short. He needs to get some lift shoes to put underneath his poll numbers, of course. But one of the things that I think came out of this, and I talked about this at great length in the first hour, was the issue about natural-born citizen. And, of course, the bigger issue of this is, are we going to take the Constitution in an originalist interpretation, or are we going to have a living Constitution where we just redefine it as we wish, okay? And when you do that, you have basically cut yourself loose from the rule of law. And we've done that in this country. And I think that's one of the things that is really scary. People in America, if they see something they don't like, if they don't like drugs, they just say, well, we're going to ignore the Constitution, and we're going to give the federal government the ability to prohibit anything that they want. We're going to let them seize property without even charging people with a crime. We're going to let them lock people up for ridiculous amounts of time. Now we got the most number of people incarcerated. And so they just say, well, we do that because we don't like drugs. And now the left wants to do that because they don't like guns. They're going to say, well, we're going to let the president just ignore the Constitution that explicitly protects it. And we looked at Lawrence Tribe talking about natural-born citizen. He goes, yeah, it's kind of like militia. You know, we've got a different definition of militia now than we did back then. It's like, no, I think it's important that we understand that militia is everybody, okay? It's not the National Guard. And if we do things like throw away these terms that were very well understood, I mean, natural-born citizen was not defined in the Constitution, just like militia was not defined in the Constitution, because everybody there knew what it was. And there's ample information for us to understand what they meant by it. And we need to understand that there were principles behind that. They had a reason for saying that the militia was everybody in the country, because they had seen over and over again how a standing army could be used to subjugate a population. So they were very concerned about that. They had seen, as Alex Jones pointed out, how you could have these infiltrators come into a country and take it over from a foreign country. So they were very concerned about that as well, and we should be as well.
Right. Well, and that's why it's so important to make sure we have a clear understanding of what they meant, because depending on the climate of what the world situation is going on, you're going to have people coming in trying to reinterpret what they meant so that they can push their own agenda. And that's why it's so important to not come in and try and reinterpret what the Constitution actually stands for and what it's stating, because, you know, you're always going to have these nefarious actors coming in.
And I think it's important that if your message is, I'm going to have a strict interpretation of the original text and the original meaning, that you don't make an exception for yourself. And that's the bigger story as well with what happened with the New York Times. And nobody went, the New York Times story about Ted Cruz and the incomplete reporting on his federal election campaign, okay? What he was doing was presenting this as his own personal savings, at the same time attacking Wall Street, attacking Goldman Sachs specifically, and taking money secretly from them and not reporting it on the federal election campaign. And so it goes to the hypocrisy of this message. That's why it's a big story. It isn't a big story because they didn't file a piece of paperwork.
Yeah.
That's what his supporters will look at this and say. But the bigger story is the fact that, you know, he has this special relationship. I mean, do you get a $1 million loan from Goldman Sachs?
Well, if I did, I wouldn't forget about it. But as we're talking about the Constitution, we have all these guys who want to give us their interpretation of the Constitution. You know, we see whether it's President Obama or Ted Cruz or anybody else, you know, I study the Constitution, I understand what's in the Constitution, but then they nitpick this and that. And as you said, they go after certain things that they like or they don't like, and they try to accentuate those things and just, like you said, turn it into a living document where they can manipulate it wherever they see fit. And I'm not knocking Ted Cruz wholly here, but you know, my issue with him is more or less the Goldman Sachs connection that you're alluding to, along with I believe Kurt Nimel's been talking about it for quite some time.
Yeah,
the
things he has going on there.
Of course.
Well, look at this Reuters article. One of the things that they point out is after taking office in March, he says, Goldman is one of the biggest banks on Wall Street. And my criticism with Washington is that they engage in crony capitalism. He said the Dodd-Frank Act on banking reform, he continued, was sold to the American people as stopping too big to fail. What happened? The banks, big banks have gotten bigger. Goldman has gotten bigger. And the point is this. He's built his campaign, they say, on the idea that the little guy has gotten a raw deal because the Washington cartel, as he puts it, has worked solely for the interests of big business and Wall Street. This was the substance of a speech he made at Conservative Heritage Foundation in June, entitled The People versus the Washington Cartel. So when he runs on the fact that he's a populist with the people, not part of Wall Street, not part of this insider group, and his wife is a managing partner of Goldman Sachs, and he wants to hide the fact that he gets $250,000 from these two bank loans, one of them from Goldman Sachs, the other one from, let's see, which bank was it here? It was Citigroup, okay? that funds his Senate campaign. So there's that hypocrisy. There's the hypocrisy that if he's going to say that he's qualified, if he's going to defend it, you don't defend it by saying, well, then that's going to mean that Marco Rubio can't run. And you don't lie about the fact that Donald Trump wouldn't be qualified. Because, again, his mother was an American citizen when he was born. That's the difference. And he was born in the United States. Ted Cruz wasn't, so forth and so on.
Yeah, well, he deflects away from himself by pointing the finger at everybody else.
He needs to give us a definition. Say, okay, fine. You're a constitutional lawyer. Give us a constitutional explanation as to how you are a natural-born citizen. When your only connection is your mother, who was living in Canada at the time, and there's suspicion that she was registered as a voter in Canada. So did she become a citizen? We don't know. There's still suspicion about that. But how does that fit under the original definition of natural-born citizen? That's the real issue here, just like this issue with Goldman Sachs is an issue.
He's quite literally in bed with him. And Trump called him out on that. And he said, you know, ask your professor. Your professor is the one that was interpreting this. This is your constitutional professor. And so he just kind of buttoned up at that point.
And then, of course, there's the other issues. And he's joined the pack in terms of saying that Ed Snowden is a traitor.
Yeah.
Reversing himself on that. I find that to be very disturbing, because we have to understand that we need to have whistleblowers. And the reason that Snowden did it the way Snowden did it was because he saw the government prosecute legitimate whistleblowers within the NSA, going after Thomas Drake specifically, threatening and coming after and detaining, breaking in on William Binney as he's taking a shower and so forth. All of these people who upheld the Constitution. Again, we're coming back to the Constitution, okay? And so you have all these NSA personnel like William Binney, who is head technical globally. He was the top person technically, as well as Thomas Drake, looking at this with others and saying, you are doing dragnet surveillance of the American people. That is unconstitutional. They went through the proper channels. They went to the Senate. They tried to follow everything by the book. They were ignored. And finally, Thomas Drake mentioned it to the press. They come after him and try to prosecute him for nonsense that they are allowing Hillary Clinton to get away with in spades.
Well, it's always kill the messenger. Because, you know, as we always point out, they don't go after the people who actually committed the acts. They want to talk about the person who brought the acts to the attention.
Yes. So we have that situation when Snowden saw that. He did what he did because he knew that they would arrest him, that they would squelch this information. And when Ted Cruz says, you know, at one point, well, if he was tipping us off to criminal wrongdoing, I'm paraphrasing what he had to say, then he should be a hero. But now he says, no, he helped our enemies. How does it help your enemies when you say that they're spying on the American people, okay? It only helps enemies in the sense that we don't like our government as much as we did before. I guess we could make that kind of an argument.
Well, and also, you know, saying that, well, now they know how we go about spying on them. And so now they can skirt around those procedures and you know, go through new channels. But they didn't stop a single terror attack. It was ineffective in the first place.
That's right.
So all they were doing was scooping up all of the personal information from millions of innocent, hundreds of millions of innocent Americans.
Yeah, it's just the bulk data collection.
Right,
you know, you got so much going on, you can't really filter through.
Wholly ineffective.
That's the point that William Binney made. He says you just created a bigger haystack to try to find your needle in.
Exactly.
And it really has not done anything to help anybody, in my opinion. I mean, clearly the state actors, it's not any big surprise when we learn through the Snowden documents that the NSA is spying on Germany, for example. Okay, even though they're our allies, we spy on them. Well, of course they know that. The states know that. And, of course, the terrorists know that as well, okay? And they're taking measures to try to undo that. So it really doesn't make a difference in that sense. And I think if we're going to take that kind of action against people who expose criminal activity, and we've seen this happen over and over again. Look at Manning, for example, when WikiLeaks exposed these videotapes of people repeatedly shooting an ambulance. You know, first of all, they shoot people that are walking around that aren't armed, people carrying a camera. Then when an ambulance comes to help them, they shoot up the ambulance, and you get the videotape where they're laughing about it and so forth. Okay, we had a similar situation with the hospital attack in Afghanistan, the Doctors Against Borders, where they not only did a 30-minute prolonged attack of something that was very well known as being a hospital, they were contacted by the Doctors Without Borders as this attack was going on. Then we learned that they were also targeting people who were running from the hospital, okay? So there are criminal war crimes that are going on that need to be exposed, need to be purged.
Right.
And understand, there's never going to be a situation where every cop, every soldier does the right thing. The test of a society is once you find out somebody has broken the moral law, broken the criminal law, broken the international law in terms of rules of engagement, that's the point at which now the society either does the right thing, they have a moment to decide as to whether or not they're going to do the right thing or they're going to embrace this criminality and continue down that path.
Well, and people act like if you point out these things that you're anti-cop or you're anti-military. No, you're trying to strengthen the military by purging the negative people in it.
Yeah.
You don't want to have these type of actions, and this is what our enemies look at. They point at this, and this is what they put in the recruitment videos. Look at these guys shooting up, you know, a guy who comes to rescue a camera crew, or look at these guys blowing up a hospital. And when you leave those people in your ranks, whether they be police or military, that's what the enemies point to. If you could get rid of those guys, then you would have a healthier law enforcement and military.
Absolutely. And that's the point that Frank Serpico has made many times. He said, of course, you're going to have bad actors in the police. So the difference is, are you going to make this corruption systemic, or are you going to prosecute the bad guys when this happens? And of course, this is the issue. And Rand Paul has said, when people bring up Snowden, he goes, okay, he broke some laws. You want to put him in jail, then put the people in jail who broke the laws to surveil on us at the same time. Nobody wants to talk about that, just like they don't want to talk about the fact that we are funding ISIS. And that's the real story about Benghazi. They're going to go to the visceral story about how these heroes were betrayed and died, and that's a very powerful
stand down. And
exactly, that's a very powerful narrative, and that story should be told. But the bigger story is the death of our society, the death of the rule of law and morality when we allow this to happen. That's the bigger story. But again, it's just a statistic, like 1 million people dying. Okay, the one person dying, that's a tragedy. This will be a very tragic movie, and it is tragic what happened there, but we still need to address these bigger problems.
Absolutely. And also one of the other things without Rand Paul being there, we couldn't address this. But one of the things that Congress does have that constitutional authority with is the military. And they want to increase the military spending by billions of dollars, which of course that means it's going to get added to our debt. And there's no way to pay for it, no way to explain why this is necessary, why it's a good idea. And also going in and saying, well, let's audit the Pentagon. How are they spending this money? What's happening there?
We can't even audit the Fed,
they don't,
let alone the Pentagon.
So they're just like, we just want to keep on throwing money at them. We don't care how they're spending it. It's going on the back of the taxpayers and the children in the future. And the only person that is saying that is insane is Rand Paul.
Yeah, yeah. He's the only one who really pushed back against the idea that we're going to go toe-to-toe with the Russians. We're going to tell them to get out of this country where they've been invited, or we're going to shoot down their planes and start World War III. But of course, they would like to start World War III if we have a total economic collapse. And as I'm looking at this and watching the stock market numbers continue to go down, that makes perfectly good sense. We've said this was the game plan all along, that they wanted to create a situation, flashpoints, where they could distract the public's attention. Is what Gerald Celente was talking about. So we understand that that's what's going to happen, but it's still very disturbing to watch this. Now, in terms of other points of the debate, what stuck out to you two last night?
Well, like I said last night, I'm not going to vote for the guy, but I thought Marco Rubio came out with some very good points. We were talking, so I really get to hear as much as I want to hear about how they felt about the Second Amendment. They did ask Trump, did you support or would you support any type of gun regulations as far as buying the firearm? And he said no, but once again, on the back end, he does support the no-fly, no-gun-buy list, which is very concerning to me. Jeb is Jeb, Jeb exclamation point. I really wish he would get off the stage and make room for somebody else. As the person that they talked to last night in Charleston pointed out, we did lose out not having Rand Paul there, but we also did win by showing people there's an alternative way to get your message across, how he did on social media.
Yeah, in the past, I think you always had some very good back and forth, especially between Rand Paul and Chris Christie. Chris Christie being the most belligerently authoritarian person on the stage and proud of it. And so it was always interesting to see the authoritarian versus the libertarian on there. But I think it was far more important for Rand Paul to break the stranglehold of the mainstream media control. And to make it clear to people, too, because I've seen Rachel Maddow saying, well, you know, he didn't make it, so he's a crybaby. And, you know, look, they had 3 polls that finished on Sunday, and they embargoed this one poll where he did well for 36 hours. Bloomberg did, and Fox said, we're not going to pay any attention to it. If they had allowed that poll there, he would have been tied with Jeb Bush, and he should have been in the debate. But he did even better. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, they were hoisted by their own petard. Stay with us. We're going to be right back with Leanne McAdoo and Jakari Jackson. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and joining me are Leanne McAdoo and Jakari Jackson. Of course, we're going to be checking in with Rob Dew as well. Comments on the debate last night. Real quickly, before we get back to our comments, we have a special for this week. Buy Survival Shield X2 Nascent Iodine and get Silver Bullet, our colloidal silver product, for 50% off, plus a free 2016 calendar. And that calendar has a lot of discounts that come about on a month-to-month basis. Again, see for yourself why both Survival Shield X2 and Silver Bullet both have an average rating of 4.8 stars out of over 1,500 reviews on InfoWarsLife.com. Also, we have a huge sale on select foods at InfoWarsStore.com, 30 to 40% off of all the foods that are available at InfoWarsStore.com, and that will end today. It's going to end within the next 24 hours. A great time for you to prepare for these uncertain times. 30 to 40% off select storable foods at InfoWarsStore.com. I'm looking at this story here about Hillary Clinton, and her national lead is slipping faster, they say, in 2016 than it did in 2008. That's pretty amazing. She is tanking very quickly. Yeah, she laughed that off, though. She said, oh, you know how these polls are. They go up, they go down. I don't really concern myself with them. Yeah, that's true. But, of course, that's the Washington Post saying that. That's not us. These are people who actually do like Hillary Clinton, and they say her national lead is slipping faster than it did 8 years ago when she eventually lost to Barack Obama. They say she's doing better nationally, but at the moment, because she's only got one competitor, in the past, in 2008, it was split between Obama and John Edwards, you know, the Breck girl. And I thought it was interesting also, we have an RNC member urging the party to rally against Trump. Now, this is the same RNC that Richard Reeves, our reporter on the ground yesterday in Charleston, South Carolina, talked to the RNC member who proposed that they impeach Obama. They couldn't get more than 4 people out of 168 to go for impeachment of Obama, but now they're saying, hey, we need to rally against Trump. That's amazing to me. And, of course, the rationale for this is that we have to say that we control this party. See, that's the kind of partisan politics.
My question is, if, you know, I'm not a supporter of Trump, but if they're going to oust Trump, who are they going to try to put in his place to, you know, really bring up the party?
Yeah, well, that remains to be seen. Of course, it looks like Rubio is winning the establishment primary at, if you look at the Drudge Report poll, and that's what they're concerned about. That's why Jeb is coming so hard after Rubio, even criticizing him for not being tall enough. Yeah. But let's go to Rob Dew. Rob, you had some comments about last night's debate. Go ahead.
First off, I want to say I am barely recovered from last night. I was up here until about 12:30 cleaning up, helping with the other guys to put the studio back together. And I do want to say you guys did a fantastic job, this being our 6th or 7th debate now. It was the 6th Republican, but we did do one Democratic debate. And there's a lot of work that goes in behind the scenes to get those things going, a lot of moving parts. And you guys were just stalwart and kept pouring the heat on these liars. Now, what y'all were saying about Trump just now, who are they going to get to replace him? I think this whole debate was set up for kind of Ted Cruz to take that mantle, because I think you are going to see Ted Cruz win Iowa. And then after that, you know, I think he's going to have some momentum. And I do think Trump's overall shtick of just kind of acting confident is sort of wearing thin. It's like people want to see what's behind the confidence. What do you have to offer in addition to just being, you know, awesome?
Exactly.
Trump,
that's my point, Rob. I think, and I've thought for a long time, that Ted Cruz was put out there as essentially a ringer to try to get the liberty vote, the common man's vote, and now we see him turning with Snowden as well as with these other issues. Stay with us. We'll be right back with more analysis. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show, this 4th hour. I'm here with Leanne McAdoo and Jakari Jackson. We also have Rob Dew joining us in the other studio, and he's going to finish up the remainder of this fourth hour after this first segment. And, of course, Rob, we were talking about who's going to take Trump's place. One of the things this RNC member was saying when he was urging the party to rally against Trump, he continued to use this phrase we heard first from Nikki Haley about angry voices. That seems to be the preferred way to refer to Donald Trump, and I thought he did a great job yesterday in terms of diffusing that. He very calmly said, yeah, we should be angry about what's going on. And I think people should be angry about what the RNC is doing. And, of course, Donald Trump is the expression of the voter anger about these people who are more concerned, as he said, about reducing our label. See, that's just it. It's their label.
Yeah, and look at life in general, David. People always say, oh, you're not supposed to be angry. Everybody's supposed to be calm. We're always supposed to be passive. From birth, they train you not to have outbursts. Those are bad. And there is something to that. But also, anger can be used as a positive force for making stuff happen. You know, you get mad, I'm going to carry the ball. I'm going to do like Alex Jones does it every day, takes that ball filled with anger, that anger-filled football, and gives you what's really on his mind every day. And I think, you know, if Alex Jones wasn't an angry person, you wouldn't see, you know, all this, this media empire that he's built from the ground up.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Look at Ritalin, for example. I mean, most CEOs have enough energy and that they would be put on Ritalin today if they were going through school. And so they want to dumb that down. They want to pull that out. But it can be a very effective strategy to be able to multitask and do a lot of things, to have a lot of energy, to have a lot of passion. We should be passionate about what is happening. And they should ask themselves, those people in the Republican Party, should ask themselves why everybody is so angry with them. And, of course, we just saw the best example of that with the omnibus bill, where they went in and funded everything, even funding that climate change treaty. A couple of weeks, you know, it was only, what, a week to 10 days old, and they said, well, we're going to have something to say about it. Well, what they said about it was, yeah, sure, you can do it.
Here you go. Yeah. They did that in 2014 and 2015, even though the voters made it clear that we wanted change. And so then they went in and just signed the whole thing over for the fiscal year.
Well, that's the thing, that people don't feel that they're accountable to the voters anymore. I'm in office, I have power, so they're just going to do whatever they want, and they know that most people are going to be asleep at the wheel and just hope that it works itself out in the end.
The term is loyal opposition, and that's what we have. This is World Wrestling Federation. This is heels and heroes. I mean, it's the same thing. We're, you know, and we're trying to, of course, we're looking at the Republican Party as something that has a little bit more variation in their thoughts. You know, you got Rand Paul on one end, and then you got Jeb Bush on the other, and then all the flavors in between. But I do think Donald Trump stands outside of that, and he proudly does that. And that's one reason why I do kind of look at him going, well, if I was going to vote for any of these clowns, it would be Donald Trump as compared to what I'm seeing out there now, unless you see Rand Paul take it. And maybe Rand Paul does have some grassroots behind him. You know, we interviewed one of the gentlemen last night, Richard did, and he was there, and he was just disappointed that Rand Paul wasn't in the debate. They had an outburst from a group saying stand with Rand. Rand was the biggest thing there on social media. So,
of course, that stand with Rand outburst was edited out of the transcript, was pointed out by somebody today. So
really?
Rand Paul's name does not appear anywhere within that debate. That's right.
Even though he had, you know, the massive presence outside, you know, Biggs talked to the guys beforehand, you know, was out there shouting stand with Rand before the thing even started.
Yeah.
You know, so people were out there concerned about Rand Paul not being included in the main event.
So when people see the mainstream media like Fox and Bloomberg and the GOP moving against somebody, they might get interested and say, hey, who is this guy that they dislike so much? Maybe there's something there. And there is something there. We see Trump bringing up issues that the other people would not talk about. We see Rand Paul bringing up issues that other people would not talk about. I would like to see a lot of these issues brought up that are being shoved to the side. For example, CISPA, or CISA as it's now called. We just had Justin Amash say that he wants to try to take that down with a bipartisan effort. Stay with us when we come back. Rob Dew will be taking over the rest of the fourth hour. We'll be right back.
This is Rob Dew. This is the fourth hour of Overdrive. You're watching the, I guess, the new tail end hour that we've added on the Alex Jones Show. If your radio station is not picking this up, call them and ask them to. It's another hour of original content that we'll be producing. We do about 5 hours a day. If you count the nightly news, is another hour of produced programming per day.
And how many videos? How many videos on YouTube?
Well, I counted yesterday. We put up 20 different videos on YouTube. I was even amazed at that. Yeah. And we actually missed a couple that are going up right now. So if you count yesterday, about 24 total videos. We are really churning it out. This week has been very productive. Last night's debate coverage, I think, was, in terms of us just really handling, we handled the debate instead of the debate handling us, like not letting these guys push their BS and just go, oh,
just
we're going to take it. We're going to take it. Yeah, we saw Rand Paul really come out and just take it away and just go, hey, you know what? I don't need your debate coverage.
Yeah, he would have been a big-time loser if he would have allowed them to demote him to the kiddie table. But he was like, no, screw you. Not only am I going to boycott, I'm going to go get all of the free media because they're all waiting to see what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to dominate on Twitter with my Periscope presentation.
It shows you how powerful social media has become, because in a lot of ways, Rand Paul stole the show last night, because he was trending on Twitter, right? He had a Facebook mentions. He was on Periscope. They had that live town hall meeting where people were able to ask the real questions, not these pre-scripted, predetermined and pre-approved questions that you would normally get in the debate. So it was pretty awesome. I was surprised.
And what do we see in the debate? A lot of the same questions. I know you guys already went over this, but it just got so boring sitting there listening to these guys.
If it wasn't for our coverage, that would have been a very boring debate.
I totally
agree.
And I really like it when people say, let them talk. No, they talk enough.
Yeah.
We're going to talk.
And we tell you straight up at the beginning if you don't want it.
People have really nothing to add. Guys, I want to show you this. These are two stories here. New York Times. I don't think you guys have this, so you want to get it on overhead cam. Deadliest Ebola outbreak on record is over, WHO says. This is from the New York Times. There it is. Now look. Ebola virus new cases emerge in Sierra Leone today.
Back by popular
it's over
demand.
And it's back. All in
Maybe it's a new strain of Ebola that they've just created in their lab.
Exactly. The span of one day, it's now back in Sierra Leone. My Ebola is back. So that just shows you that nobody really knows what is going on over there and how these things are being, how it's being created, how it's being controlled. It's a sad situation, especially for the Africans, but I firmly believe there is something going on behind the scenes that is making this disease as virulent as it is and as widespread as it is. I don't think it's happening by natural osmosis. That's my gut feeling. So we'll leave that there. I've also got a bunch of GMO news that I printed this out for when Anthony's going to come on. Anthony Gucciardi is going to be joining me at the bottom of the hour, those of you keeping score. And we're going to be talking about all kinds of stuff, including what's going on with Walmart, as Alex Jones talked about earlier in a video we shot. We shot that in the office. We gave it to the guys. They put it up, played it, put the articles on top of it, made it even more dynamic, all live and in real time. And we're at the point now, like, where the team is so coalesced, we could start bringing in more people and showing them how the processes work and how we get stuff done quickly and efficiently, but also looking good.
Yeah.
Because there is a technique to get it out there quickly in making it newsworthy, and whether it's shooting a video on YouTube and uploading it immediately, or Facebook mentions, or doing a produced report. There's all different ways to get this information out. So, Darren, like, I guess what I want to know is, what's your process of putting something together like that intro that we just saw if you were watching on Infowars.com/show? Go ahead.
It's a little bit more processed. It's more polished when I'm doing those intros. So, so it really just takes, I storyboard it, and first I get all the clips together. And
that was a massive amount of clips too. All those attacks on Alex over the years. I mean,
and a lot of times you have to narrow it down, because each time I do this, I could literally have a 2-hour documentary each time, So just kind of get the best of and change it up and make it exciting. Throw some music on there, some fancy graphics, and that's how we do it.
Which, by the way, we have some playlists on our Alex Jones channel where we basically have started collating all of the fans have made intros, or the fans go and find the Alex Jones rants and they create their own remixes of rants, and so we add those to this playlist, kind of giving the fans a little bit of a boost as well.
That's right. We should have a list of intros as well, because I know Jakari Jackson, he's made several of them that are very nice, and so it's always fun putting the intros together.
The George Carlin one, I kind of cut it up, then you made it look really good
together. Yep.
I think that's where we really can come together on that stuff, is doing it that way and sharing the load.
Yeah. So there's all the playlists if anyone wants to.
Guys, check out this story. Texas student suspended for sharing inhaler. A Texas middle school student was suspended after sharing her inhaler with an asthmatic student who was gasping for breath on Tuesday. She faces 30 days at an alternative school.
Wow. And that's not to protect the girl, to protect the school. You should have let her die.
Yeah. It would have been better to let her die, or, have even a worse allergy attack.
Brain death from not being able to breathe, losing oxygen. And this is a human being. That's your innate thing, is you want to save that other human being. But now you could potentially get sued, or the school could get sued.
Yeah. The saddest part about that headline is it's not even shocking anymore.
Oh, I know. They're suspended for
10 years ago, that would have been a really big deal, and it should be a big deal now. But I mean, it's just like I feel like I'm immune to it.
Here's some more like this all the time. Freedom in America.
Let's see this one.
Freedom.
Plano mom sued over playhouse loud kids. Yeah, the sound of children playing. We've seen this before. Remember the cardboard house? The guy built his cardboard fort in front of his
castle,
kids?
And that was so offensive.
And it looked awesome, and people freaked out about it. You know what? Those things last about 2 weeks. Let the kids have their fun.
Or they're going to come arrest you.
Why are people so stuffy? I mean, this life is so short. You got one life to live. Enjoy it. Why do people need their perfect lawns and their perfectly manicured homes? Oh,
no, they've been conditioned to think that's
success.
The best way to live.
Yeah.
But her classmate began wheezing and gasping for breath, and every second gets worse, said the student who helped her out and who's had the disease since she was 5. And Rush offered the girl her inhaler, and the two were sent to the principal's office. Rush was punished for several days of at-home suspension. I mean, this is a travesty. I can't believe this happens. You help out somebody and you get punished.
Right.
And that's why, and then people don't help in the future. People drive by car wrecks because they go, if I help, I might get sued or I might get in trouble.
Exactly. Yeah. If I try to stop you from choking, I might get sued for
I've had paramedics tell me that if they're off duty, just to keep driving, that they will keep driving if they see somebody in a wreck.
It's such a shame.
Yeah, that's where we're at.
Now, I know one of the things that I was going to be speaking about tonight on the Nightly News is the fact that they are, with college students, they're basically like these built-in buyers for classes are forcing them to wear Fitbits and wearables and things so they can track their every move. And people are like, oh, well, that's voluntary. Or when your employer wants to start tracking you, oh, wear this wearable so that it'll take down your insurance rates. Well, look at this story. Employee wellness programs, not so voluntary anymore.
There it is.
There it is. You got to give up that biometric information if you want to keep your insurance.
Doing the same thing to preschoolers.
And I've got a story here somewhere about a man who used a microchip implant on his hand to get through airport security.
Oh.
You know, the technology's out there. Some people are using it for good. Some people are using it for evil. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with much more. And Anthony Gucciardi is going to be sitting in as well. It's the 4th hour of Overdrive. I'm your host, Rob Dew. Darren McBreen, Leanne McAdoo sitting in with me. And we are live. It's a short segment here on the 4th hour Overdrive hour. I'm your host, Rob Dew. Got Darren McBreen, Leanne McAdoo also sitting in. Next segment, I'll be joined by Anthony Gucciardi, and we're going to be going over some health news and also taking a look at Walmart and what looks to be the fall of Walmart is happening now. What does that mean for the rest of the country and society in general? Have we outgrown the Walmart model? But first, before we get to that, we had a guest yesterday, Tim Kennedy, who's a UFC fighter, and he was talking about, this ISIS threat that the FBI told him about, which was against him. And earlier today, Alex did a video showing how Obama said, hey, anybody who says the economy's doing bad is peddling fiction. And then we get this news about the Walmart.
Right.
And yesterday, you did this. This was your opening on the Nightly News, your opening stories talking about how Obama said, oh, ISIS is contained. And then you kind of detailed all those. Why don't you go into a little bit of what you talked about last night?
Well, just, the State of the Union, the State of the Onion, I would call it, is he just came out and told everyone what he wants us to be like, what he wants reality to be, not what reality is. So I just kind of took everyone down memory lane just the last year, less than a year, pointing out all the different times that there have been actual terror attacks, people being picked up by the FBI, planning terror attacks here on U.S. soil, terror attacks that were thwarted here, like in Dallas with the Draw Muhammad contest, and, all these mysterious cell phone purchases, which in several of these instances, it's those prepay phones which are being used to detonate these explosives.
That's in Missouri, yeah. There's
exactly.
a whole bunch of those. And there were some other things that went missing in some areas. People were... crazy stuff,
but
suspicious behavior. People were asking about dams.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Wanted to take a tour of the dam, which is completely illegal. And so, but you know what? Obama is, everything is awesome.
Nothing to see, nothing to see.
There you go. And so let's go to this clip now. This is from yesterday's, I guess it was the 4th hour. He kind of finished up the show with Alex, and then I jumped in. But this is Tim Kennedy, UFC fighter, talking about the threat that the FBI told him. Here it is.
I said years ago, this ISIS spinoff of al-Qaeda is big, a lot bigger than al-Qaeda was, because I'm on the ground.
I get the threats. I see them at Ferguson and at New York, and I see the signs. I see the stickers. It's trendy with the left, and it's in Texas. We go out to these Islamic training centers and get death threats. We get hacked. We get they put Joe Biggs, former Staff Sergeant, U.S. Army, decorated combat vet. They put him in ISIS videos when he went down to the border to show him on the Texas border. So this is what they do. But Tim Kennedy, just like bin Laden's a high-value target or was, he's a high-value target. Now, Tim, I just set the stage. Is that accurate, what I said? Correct me if I'm wrong. You're the expert. And please break down in as much detail as you can about the personal Federal Bureau of Investigation visit and warning you got. And it's great to have you here in the Info War.
I've been a fan for a long time, so just appreciate you having me. From what they said, the FBI, the credible threat came from every day. I get 5 to 10 people saying, "Hey, I hate you. You're going to die. I want to kill you. Everything that you stand for, I hate." What makes this significant is, this one was geotagged, and they had content that they couldn't have gotten from anywhere else besides first person. So they had pictures of a guy's head that they had cut off, and they said, "This is going to be you." The geotagged picture was close enough that the FBI says, "Hey, this is significant, and that's why we're talking to you right now." The problem was that I've been doing this for 13 years. I don't know if I'm desensitized to it or I just don't care, and I have zero respect for the cowards that they are. And the FBI is like, "You're not normal. You should be a little bit freaked out by this." I was like, "I don't know. Let them come. I don't I've been traveling all over the world to find these guys, and now they're going to come to Texas. Last time they gave it a whirl was in Garland, and that didn't go so well for them. So come to Central Texas and see how this is going to work. The only thing they got going for them is they're brutal, they're evil, and they have no respect for human life. They're uneducated, they're weak, they're stupid, but they have no respect for anything, and they'll take advantage of the weakest.
Versions of this. We have the short clip up on our YouTube channel if you guys want to pull up the computer here. FBI says ISIS threat in Texas, and also former Green Beret UFC fighter details ISIS threat in Texas. That's the longer interview Tim Kennedy did with Alex, and we have the shorter one, which just details talking about the threat. And, I don't think they said it in that clip, but it was geotagged from Houston, Texas.
Oh, wow.
That's where it originated from. So that's pretty close.
Right, which is where they have picked up the other guy there in Houston who was working on attacking some malls there in Houston using prepaid phones to detonate these explosive devices. So
I wonder if they're buying the phones somewhere else and then shipping them over so there's no connection, or they can,
And are they coming across the border? I mean, we've talked to Texas Border Patrol volunteers, right, and they've found Muslim prayer rugs, Iranian cash on the Texas side of the border. I mean, so it's,
translation dictionaries.
Yep, that's right.
So it's here, people. You better get prepared for it, because and keep your eyes open, because ISIS is here in America, and we definitely need to do something about its creation by our government. We'll be back with more. It's Rob Dew for the 4th Hour of Overdrive. Thanks to Darren and Leanne for sitting in.
Yep.
There was a time when America, as it was coming up, there's always been hardships, but there was a time when people they had honor, they had integrity, and there's always going to be bad people out there. But, it really is time for good men and women to stand up and stop being part of the silent majority, and really taking action in whatever your issue is. You can't cover them all. Find your issue and make a stand, say something, educate people. Today I want to do a quick plug here. Ending today is your last chance to get 30 to 40% off InfoWars Select storable food. So it's 30, 40% off the retail price. They have a 25-year shelf life, packaged here in the USA, made in the USA. And food prices are going up. So I've noticed that I can't find a decent beer for under $9 a six-pack. So get it today. I have lots of storable food, and I keep it for those times. You never know when you're going to need it. There could be a tornado or a hurricane that hits your area, so your house isn't touched, but there's no electricity. So you want easy to make meals, and just add water. You have a portable stove. You can cook this stuff up, keep your family fed, and also protect your property, because the government's not going to protect your property. My parents were in Hurricane Rita, and our house had 3 trees fall on it. Half of the house was livable, half of it wasn't. No air conditioning. It was really hot. It was like the end of September. It was the year the other hurricane hit New Orleans. I forget the name. It was Katrina. Yeah, that's it. So then Rita hit, and what did we survive on? We had MREs that we were able to eat. We also had some other food that we were preparing, but we ate MREs twice a day, and they were great and they worked. But it's not nearly as good as what you're going to get from the InfoWars Select storable food. So go to InfoWarsStore.com, check out what we have there. Lots of different variations. I think there's a 1 month all the way up to, a year supply that you can get. So check that out, 40% off the retail price. Now, sitting next to me in studio is Anthony Gucciardi. And at first, we're going to talk about health issues. And I guess this is a health issue. This is the health of the economy, health of the world, the mental health, the spiritual health of people, and how things are changing. And a big bellwether is what happened with Walmart, the big announcement today.
Well, I think I heard from an advertisement on television that you can buy the American Dream at Walmart for 50% off. Okay. Walmart is the embodiment of what America has become. And I really, really believe the age of Walmart is over. And I believe Walmart closing its 269 stores today, which I understand is only 1% really of their annual, income. I get that it's not that they're over. I get that. But it's the beginning of the end for them, I believe. And I believe it's a micro symbolism of what's happening in this country and really the world. Because if you look at Walmart, if you look at the decaying, slave good slinging reality that is Walmart, what it is the embodiment of everything that we need to stand against in this country that has taken it over. It is the parasite. It is the company that pushes as hard as it can to save you money, right, by paying Chinese slave laborers. And I have some stories here from international news agencies about the slave labor, from IHS Child Slave Labor News. And I want to give you an example of what they're really doing. But today really marks a change in my view. The age of Walmart is over because we've already decided we're not going to support them anymore. But it's not just the store. I want to make that clear. It's the politicians. It's the establishment system. It's the whole shebang that is done. The fakeness. Watching the debates last night, I got to tell you, one thing that really makes me mad, I don't even care sometimes about what they're saying as much as they're saying it's so fake, so scripted. Jeb Bush is just a joke. But some of the things that Ted Cruz says, right? He goes up there, he doesn't speak like we're speaking right now from the heart or anything like that. It sounds so canned. Well, I believe in an America. People are tired of that crap. They want reality. We're tired of buying into our own slavery because the establishment sells us slavery just like Walmart sells us slavery. Because when we spend money at Walmart and we support child slavery, we buy into the system, we support our own slavery.
And the TV reinforces that. And so people think that's the way to get the American dream is to buy imported slave goods because you're saving money so then you can spend it elsewhere. But what people don't realize is that you're also undercutting your local economy, which is a big deal. And people are starting to see that local is better. They're not eating out at McDonald's as much anymore. You're seeing other, restaurants, people that serve good food. Those restaurants are being patroned by people. And it is. And the debates last night, who was the winner of the debate? Rand Paul, and he didn't even show up, and he got the most attention out of anybody. He's probably going to go up in the polls as a result of not showing up to the debate and able to get his ideas out there without listening to John Kasich drone on or Rubio or any of these other guys, just drone on about the same issues over and over again. He was able to take each question they were asked and give an impassioned, long-form answer.
We're just sold over and over again, like you just said. We're sold the cheap prices at Walmart is our salvation. It's the American dream. We're sold that these politicians standing up there like plastic figurines reading a teleprompter that they've rehearsed, hours and hours for this, that's our salvation. That's BS. That's complete BS, and we're tired of it completely. Look at this article from Huffington Post, for example. Corporations working hard to keep Chinese slave labor. And if you actually look at the IHS Child Slave Labor News website, it specifically says, it's messed up, Walmart and child slave labor, is the cost worth it? In 2003, it was recorded that there were 246 million child laborers in the world, and the number is increasing. Many companies use cheap child slave labor in third world countries in order to make a large profit. Young children are forced to work in sweatshops and produce shoes, clothing, toys, and other products. Walmart is a huge contributor to this issue because they encourage the cheap labor in order to save money. It's the largest employer in the United States with over 1 million workers. It's the largest food retailer and the third largest pharmacy. The factories in China that Walmart uses are horrible. The average pay in these special economic zones is 3 cents an hour, and even the best workers will receive at most 10 cents an hour. There are some workers who make a profit of 36 cents a month. Not normally. People cannot survive on this. Walmart workers are like slaves that suffer unjust treatment. At the factory in China, thousands of women work 98-hour weeks but profit less than $22 weekly.
God.
Okay, let's put that in perspective.
And that's what you're supporting when you go to Walmart.
But yeah, and let's be clear though too. I buy things that are made in China. You buy things that are made in China.
You can't avoid it.
Pretty much everyone watching buys things that are made in China. Is that a bad decision? Yes. Are we terrible people? No. But you know what is terrible? The #1 producer of all of this, according to this, is still doing it, right? And promoting it. Because as this one article I have so intelligently says, and somewhere in here, the scoop.
I think I grabbed it from.
No, it says something along the lines of people care more about cheap Asian food than Chinese slaves, right? So they go to Walmart, unfortunately, because this is the American dream, right? We go to Walmart, we can get some stir fry for 99 cents instead of going somewhere else and paying $1.30. Well, that's a victory. That's the American dream. But in reality, what's happening is Walmart and the people behind this are the ones really doing it, because we don't know that. We're not looking at the 99-cent stir fry and thinking I'm killing children. You know, it's the people that have to make the decisions, the big executives that have to say, well, we're going to save $1 million if we pay the kids 20 cents a week, as opposed to actually pay them good wages, right? Have suicide. Well, we'll just put the suicide nets in there, or Apple, right?
Yeah.
So my message, though, is a victory. It's not trying to be just depressing talking about this. I mean, the majority of Americans see Congress as an out-of-touch, corrupt organization, according to Gallup. 48% say their own representatives are out of touch. 32% say their own member is corrupt. CBS says, why don't Americans trust the government? Come on, guys. Why don't you trust the government?
Yeah.
Want to cut government waste? Find the $8.5 trillion the Pentagon can't account for. The fakeness, in my view, the Walmart system that we all live under, because again, the establishment is like Walmart.
It's embodied in our government.
It's collapsing.
Yeah.
Because we're not going to buy it anymore. We're not buying into our own slavery. So I think the veil is going away. And I will say also, those stores closing is a sign that Walmart is on the verge in the beginning of a total collapse, in my view, because people aren't buying this. And if you look at the executives' responses of Walmart, well, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. They just keep saying it over and over again. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal.
The economy's doing great. You're peddling fiction if you say anything otherwise. That's what Obama said.
If you look at the numbers, people do want to support local businesses. They don't want to buy the slave goods anymore, and they're not going to stand for it. So I declare the age of Walmart is over, and I declare we are having a victory. Even with all this messed up stuff going on, the reality is we're not buying it anymore.
I saw a meme going around said, you know, we declared a war on drugs, we have more drugs. We declared a war on poverty, we have more poverty. I wish the government would declare a war on farmers markets. So we'd have more farmers markets, so we know what to do with. Guys, if you can pull up the computer again. Paul Joseph Watson put out a video a couple days ago. Why capitalism is great. And it's got this girl with the pink hair, and she's flipping off the camera using her iPhone. Resist capitalism. I mean, that's what you're dealing with. You're dealing with these young, spoiled kids here in the United States that think everything should be free because, you know, we should have robots doing it, or it should be free because there's a lot of money going around, and there is money going around. You can see the thumbnail on the computer. Did it die over here? Okay, I'll pop it back up real quick. But you see, like, that is just, people are detached, and there's a lot of people waking up, but people are detached from what's really going on and how their stuff is made. They don't know where their chicken comes from. They don't know any of this stuff.
It's the new age of entitlement.
Right.
Because they've never actually had to go through the process. They just get the end result, right? So when you don't have to go through the process of having, let's say, a horrible job to create financial stability, right? You have to clean floors and sweep things and scrub dirty dishes, right? Like working at a server as a busboy or server or something.
A dish dog.
You don't
That's
appreciate
you're called a dish dog. I worked at a restaurant. I was the dish dog for 3 months.
But let's
I
stop
worked
right
my
there,
way
though.
out of
We
it.
don't want to sound, because we're not, right? We're not grumpy old men. This new generation, right? Because that's not really what it's about. It's because anyone can be entitled.
Sure.
Right? Anyone can act ridiculous like that and not understand the severity of it. And I think it's also because of their insecurities. They don't want to open themselves up to that reality. It's like when some people, you start talking about this stuff like the Chinese slave labor. They say, well, I don't want to hear about that. Don't tell me about that. I don't care.
Let's go to Walmart.
Yeah, let's go to Walmart. It's the sad truth is, though, if they actually read about it and listened to it, they would probably cry and be really upset, right? They'd be upset as I am, but they won't let themselves do that. They won't accept that reality, right? And sometimes that also comes off as snide and rude and entitled, which it is in some ways, but they also just won't accept that reality, right? Because they can't, because that would shatter their illusion that the establishment gave them, the Walmart dream.
From birth.
They bought the American dream at Walmart.
From birth.
And the dream that they have that everything is great, everything's fine, and as long as you have your new iPhone, who cares?
Exactly. Or being able to go to the movies or get a new pair of jeans. All this stuff is made by these people in third world countries. And we do have to seriously examine that. And one way to do that is to also start businesses here in the United States, even though you're taxed to the gills at doing it. But it's people working hard is what made this country great. All right. There's nothing else. Nothing was handed to us. All right. We did steal some land from the Indians, but nothing was done in terms of, like, nothing was given to us. Everything, there's some show on Netflix where they're building the railroad across the United States. They had to lay it one step at a time. It didn't happen overnight, but they laid a rail, and then they laid another rail, and then they get to a bridge and they build a bridge. And it doesn't happen overnight. None of this stuff. People think that stuff's going to happen, like these people who are running to that 7-Eleven and jumping around like we won. Well, they didn't win anything. They were celebrating with the guy who had the Powerball ticket. See if you guys can pull that up.
Yeah.
They're jumping around like they're winners. They didn't win anything. And it's this instant gratification, this instant entitlement society that is slowly, we've reached it's reached the peak of what it is. And now we're going to start seeing the fall. And I agree with you. I think maybe in 10 years, we might see, Walmart's at 50% of what it was. McDonald's is at 40% of what it was. And people, as they start making better decisions about how they spend their dollars and how they spend their time, you're going to see the system change on its own. And it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen with an election either. People think it's going to happen in the presidential election. It ain't going to happen.
Well, see, here's my view on this. I think the age of information has already come. People already get it. People already have the information. Now is the time of action, the age of solutions, the age of action. 2016 opens the new door for actions and solutions and real results, because we already know what's screwed up in the world. We get that now. Now it's time to equip the information and do something about it. And you talk about money, right? You talk about entrepreneurship. You talk about all that stuff. I did a segment when I hosted the 4th Hour last time called The Truth About Money. And here's the ridiculousness of the entitlement society. They want everything. They want everything. I mean, they want everything. They want the new iPhone, just like Watson's awesome video. They want all of it. But if you try to build anything and you're not the establishment, here's the key part. You're not the establishment. Oh, my God.
We can't trust that.
What?
You just want to make money.
Like when you do a plug for the awesome products and InfoWarsLife.com, InfoWarsStore.com, which are awesome and I use every day and I think they're great. You should buy them. Seriously. How dare you? How dare you? But you can watch television commercials all day for the Fortune 500 where they just shove it down your throat over and over again, or sponsored ads online. Every single article is pretty much a sponsored article now. When you go, you go to read the news, it's all sponsored by Motorola. Get the new Motorola X93. And it's like, oh, cool. Haha, that's so cool. I want to get the new iPhone. That's awesome. Oh, but you're not the establishment and you're trying to sell something?
All right, how dare you?
And
while we're
they
talking
have been
about
militarized against people to make money.
Exactly. Against anybody but the establishment. Only the giant pyramid can make money. I'm going to do another plug here. Brain Force, and this just happened today. Travis Knight, David Knight's son, who just got back from Oregon, he's trying to detox from caffeine, so he hasn't had coffee since Tuesday. And he came in looking, I'm sorry. He was up here he was the last one to leave last night, too. Last one to leave last night, uploading YouTube videos, making those highlight clips, which the one you have to go watch is a 20-minute clip of last night's. And we have a plug from a guy from North Carolina who's got an amazing accent, big InfoWars fan.
Is that the guy at the end?
Yeah, at the very end. It's just great. But anyway, I said, Travis, you got to try Brain Force. He's like, what? said, yeah, man, here. I gave him 2 Brain Force. I'm walking around doing other stuff. I'll walk by him 15 minutes later. He's like, oh, my God, that stuff really works. I can't believe it. I'm like, yeah, dude, it works. I said, it really does work. We put out good stuff. So get your Brain Force. If you're feeling sluggish and you're trying to get off coffee, which we also sell coffee too, which I love. I'm drinking mine right now. But if you really want to get off coffee, if you want to have energy, if you want your mind to feel like you're in control of your mind, not that you're underneath a blanket or, you know, that fuzzy feeling you get when you're just sluggish. Brain Force will work. I tell you, it is amazing. And right now we got it for $29.95 at InfoWarsStore.com, also InfoWarsLife.com. And you get discounts as you get more. So I don't know what you're waiting for. You got to try our products. There's reviews. Look at that. It's 471 reviews, 4.4 rating. That's almost unheard of. You know, we really do put out good stuff. Anthony is a big reason for that. We also have a buy Survival Shield X2 and get Silver Bullet at 50% off, plus a free calendar. So you can write down all those dates, all those little milestones that you reach in your life, you and your kids. Final segment of the Infowars.com Alex Jones Show. We're on AM and FM, shortwave. We stream live at Infowars.com/show. Many ways you can get us. We also put the show up on YouTube later for those who want to catch it there. A lot of ways you can catch it. Another way is to become a member of PrisonPlanet.tv. And that funds a lot of the equipment, the personnel here. It's your subscription to Prison Planet TV that allows you to also get the free streams of the nightly news and the Alex Jones Show. Those are then archived. We also have special reports, all of Alex's movies. A lot of people don't know Alex used to make documentaries. He's made about 20-something documentaries, 22, a few of which I came in 2009. I worked on Obama Deception, Fall of the Republic, a couple others, Police State for the Rise of FEMA. And he's kind of moved on from that because by the time we get done with the documentary, that news is almost old. So we've gone to this new form of getting there on the scene, sticking an iPhone up and streaming that live back to studio and doing it a lot more, doing it live, you know, F it, we'll do it live. As who said that?
Bill O'Reilly.
Bill O'Reilly. Oh my God, how did I forget? But hey, I want to cover this story. This is interesting. And this is a story of a company going, hey, you know what? We got to reboot here. Chipotle had it was that outbreak of food poisoning where people were getting sick. I think it was E. coli they were getting started up in Seattle and Washington. And now on February 8th, they're going to close company-wide and have food safety meetings. They hired a food safety expert. They're going to get together, have their safety meetings, and really work on making it safe for people to eat there. And, you know, their stock's gone down. They didn't go, oh, we're going to close a bunch of stores and lay off a bunch of people. We're going to regroup and come back even stronger. And sometimes it takes that. Take a step back, you find something wrong in the process, and then you take 2 steps forward because nothing is perfect. Nothing is ever going to be perfect. And nothing is going to change, you know, overnight. But they're literally going to try to attempt that on February 8th. Change overnight and just go, boom, we're going to reset, come back with a new attitude. And, you know, I wish them the best because I like Chipotle.
So strong opinions are best held very weakly, right? So if I come into something and I see it's Chipotle, oh, it's a big corporation, they're instantly bad, right? We can't always hold those views. Oh, that's so terrible. Chipotle has actually handled things really, really well. And I'm sure they're covering their butts in a lot of ways. But looking at the GMO issue where they said, hey, we don't know exactly what's going on, but our customers are pretty freaked out by GMOs overall. Yeah. So we're going to do our best to get rid of them. A+. Hey,
antibiotics.
Yeah, the antibiotics. They're actually doing things that matter and changing things. And they have a huge pull and a huge leeway. And they're feeding millions of people. So they're directly impacting the lives and health of millions of people. Chipotle overall is doing a good job. It's the complete opposite of Walmart. The Walmart strategy would have been, no one got sick here. What? That's absurd. Open the hatch. You know, the Walmart strategy would have just been reduce pay or something absurd like that. You know, shut down all the stores and instead of doing the one Chinese factory with the dead pig sludge everywhere, go next door or something.
Exactly. Now, speaking of GM products, FDA gives okay for companies' genetically engineered potato. And in a letter to Idaho-based J.R. Simplot, the FDA said the potato isn't substantially different in composition or safety from other products already on the market. Yeah, so FDA just said it's good. And, you know, there's no evidence, they say, continuing this article, there's no evidence that genetically modified organisms known as GMOs are unsafe to eat, but there is an ethical issue. And I think the ethical issue is they're taking genes from other things and splicing them into each other. It's not like we're taking two potatoes and mating them. You know, they're taking insect genes. They're taking glyphosate-resistant genes. I mean, people really need to, I think the GMO thing is really going to come to a head this year. We saw some victories. We saw some setbacks last year. But 2016 is a new year. Right, Anthony? And we're going to take the fight to them on the GMO front.
2016 is a new year. It's the age of solutions and action.
What are you doing out there? What are you doing out there to make changes in your life? Thanks for joining us. 7 p.m. Central tonight for the Nightly News. Join Jakari Jackson, and we'll be back on Sunday.
I want more candy. I want more video games. Lie.
And it's that type of behavior that spurred me to do the research to develop a true nutraceutical formula that was designed to smooth out and help children focus. All of our children are hit with modern mind control. Television, music, fast food, GMOs, sugars, you name it. Young humans have not yet developed their nervous system and are being hammered daily by globalist concoctions. It's no wonder they can't focus and calm down and then are put on dangerous psychotropic drugs. Working with my team, we set out to find the best formula with the highest quality ingredients that children would actually like and take. We worked with the leading manufacturer in nutritional supplements that are safe for children to bring you the most affordable and powerful calming formula out there. Introducing Child Ease with herbs and calming extracts like chamomile and lemon balm and essential nutrients that taste great. Obtain your Child Ease today at InfoWarsLife.com. That's Child Ease exclusively at InfoWarsLife.com.